Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yamina Revolution. And we got to get back into the U.S. empire and the Kenyan death squads and what exactly is going on in Haiti. Revolutionary salute to our brothers and sisters in Haiti. But before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. We got some, revolution is a way of life, and revolution is for breakfast, is for lunch, is for dinner. So we got some revolutionary breakfast for y'all this morning. We standing with the Haitian revolutionaries. Long live the Haitian struggle. They want to overthrow empire and bring that to an end. The Boule, the Haitian Boule, and the Greek freaks in America has been helping overthrow our brothers and sisters. We need to get an update exactly on what's going on. Innocent men and women are being tortured and murdered with the complicity of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Constant self-criticism about refining our understanding, our analysis of what's happening around us in a scientific way. Because if we're not sticking to facts and striving to understand exactly what's going on, it's too easy to get caught up and become captured. So really, Uncaptured is about staying physically, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally free, uncaptured from the deluge of propaganda that the corporate media, the legacy media pumps out to keep us divided, to keep us in some artificial left-right divide when really it's up and down. And there are many more of us. So that's the idea of Uncaptured. So again, please subscribe, turn on notifications, share this around as widely as you can. And I try to interact with the chats as much as possible, and super chats are much appreciated, and I'll absolutely be sure to answer any questions. Very interesting moment. Of course, you spoke at the UN Security Council back in 2022. Was it in 2022?
Yes, December 21st.
Okay, December 21st, 2022. You spoke at the UN Security Council. I had the privilege to speak there a couple of days ago, and I delivered a message against intervention, which we'll get to. And so we'll play my speech there, my intervention rather. But first,
if I can just interject, I was speaking to a former prominent Haitian who will remain nameless, but has some influence. But he said you stopped that intervention in its tracks with that statement. So that's a little preview for the listeners.
Wow.
Yeah.
I hope so, because it's impossible to know what kind of impact our work actually have, whether it's making documentaries or it's hard to measure these things. You just kind of put it out into the ether and see what happens.
Right.
So, I mean, if there's a grain of truth to that statement, then I'm satisfied.
Yes.
So we're in this sort of perilous moment, I think, Kim, in which the U.S. has been trying since 2021, since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, to organize an armed invasion, is what it really is, not an intervention. An intervention is when a legitimate government requests a foreign power to intervene in its country, but there's no legitimate government to request. The president was assassinated, and this assassination has U.S. fingerprints all over it, which has been covered, and we're not going to cover here today. We're not going to delve into that today, but the U.S. has been trying to organize this invasion of Haiti, and it's basically stalled out. It got the UN Security Council to bless what it called the Multinational Security Support Mission, the MSS. This is the acronym it uses. And that involved bringing in, do you know exactly how many Kenyan mercenaries? I can't hear you, Kim. We lost you. Can't hear you. Kim is for some reason, your mic is not connected.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Yeah,
Okay.
it's connected for a second.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah, it's 430. Some of them are Jamaicans, and I think there's a handful of like 3 or 4 Bahamians in there. And yeah, but it's about 430 right now. Mostly all Kenyans.
Right. So, okay, so the vast majority are Kenyans. There's some Jamaicans. I saw that Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, has said that he would send some of his men in there. And this is simply not enough to be able to wage any kind of invasion. Really a few or several dozen to back up the sort of anemic, totally corrupt Haitian National Police against an increasingly united armed front known as Vivre Ensemble, live together in Haitian Creole. It's not enough. And so the U.S., after it got the UN Security Council, including, which of course includes its geopolitical rivals, China and Russia, to agree to, or to not veto this MSS, to send these mercenaries in. Now the U.S. is saying, no, we need a full UN intervention, or rather an invasion. And so if you can just kind of paint a picture of what's been going on since this MSS began, and how Vivre Ensemble has come together, and where we are in this moment.
Yes, well, this would be the 4th invasion, and I would even qualify the invitation to foreign troops in 1994 by Jean-Bertrand Aristide, who was the legitimate president, although he was in Washington at the time because he'd had a coup d'etat in 91. But that was really an invasion too, because he was forced to do it with a gun to his head. Basically, the U.S. said the only way you're getting back is if you agreed to our conditions of neoliberal reform to Haiti, and if you don't, you're not going anywhere. And he agreed, and when he came back, well, that's a whole other story. So this will be, or is, the 4th foreign military intervention officially since 1915, which was the first. U.S. Marines came in and took over Haiti for 19 years. The second one was that 94 intervention. The third one was a 2004 intervention. And now this MSS, which was a compromise, which the U.S. ambassador to the UN called a new way of preserving global peace and security. De Laurentiis is his name. And it was essentially a compromise because I think with my intervention in December 2022, it stopped it for a while, and Russia and China felt they had enough ammo to basically argue against it. And so that was the compromise they came with. We're going to send in troops who will not be a UN force that is under the control and supervision of the Security Council, but will have the blessing, the benediction of the Security Council. So this was the new way of preserving global peace and security. The problem is the U.S. doesn't have the money to pay for it. $600 million to pay for these 2,500 troops. It's supposed to be 2,500. It's only 400 because this so-called coalition of the willing can't find anybody who's willing. Nobody wants to get into this mess, which they see in Haiti. And so the Kenyans are left there with their pants hanging out. And we see them practically doing nothing, being very ineffective. And they're just mercenaries anyway. They don't want to get anything but their salaries, which are 10 times more than the Haitian cops, who are the ones doing all the fighting. So it's a total mess. It's a disaster. And the U.S. is paying for 2/3 of it, 3/4 of it. And they want to ship that burden over to the UN. But as our friend Jake Johnston over at the Center for Economic and Policy Research said, even that's not easy because the peacekeeping budget at the UN is not being paid. A lot of the countries who have sent peacekeepers are waiting for their money. And it's only going to get worse under Donald Trump, who, as we know, has great animosity for the UN and the globalist architecture. So basically, that's where we are with an ineffectual intervention, and the Viva Sum coalition basically making strides and gaining ground, with the government basically falling apart and in total disarray. They just jettisoned the first prime minister they put in back in April, and they put in a new guy who is essentially the embodiment of the Haitian bourgeoisie. He is at the head of a number of business people, bourgeois groups who are taking over Haiti. But ironically, this is for the sector called the Lavalas and Unité sector, which was Aristide and Preval, his so-called twin. So the two of them had these two parties, Lavalas and Unité, and so this sector of businessmen are the one taking over. So we see the two leaders of the last 3 decades who were fighting with the U.S. are now its handmaidens. So it's a very sad situation, but the Viva Sum, as we've described it in the past, is basically Aristide with a gun. They are demanding the basics of life for the poor of Haiti, and we'll see if they succeed.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few things I want to flesh out a little bit there. One, that Leslie Voltaire, who is now the interim president.
Yes, rotating president of this 9-member presidential council.
Right, which is just totally absurd. Of course, this council is not elected, but appointed by Anthony Blinken, and that's something I said in my speech at the Security Council. But Leslie Voltaire, what you're just saying, Leslie Voltaire from the Lavalas party, these guys, the Lavalas, were the ones who were supposed to be the revolutionaries in the 90s and who the U.S. couped twice. These are the social revolutionaries, and now they've become the biggest defenders of the status quo, and faced with an armed revolution, which is what Viva Sum represents. They have become the biggest tools of the U.S. They are the ones who helped, who actually the propaganda campaign regarding an incident, a battle in La Saline, which came to be known as the La Saline massacre, but as we found in our investigations, and we examined this thoroughly in the first episode of Another Vision, was not a massacre at all, but a battle. And in fact, and this actually escaped our investigation. We figured this out later, thanks to our friend Travis Ross, who's a great journalist on Haiti, and he found that it was actually great researcher. He publishes frequently with Haiti Liberté. He found that it was actually like a Lavalas official or party member who came up with this whole smear campaign against Cherizier to get him labeled as some kind of terrorist or mass murderer. And so you have that, and then you have Leslie Voltaire, who's now the phony U.S. appointed interim president in this rotating cast of clown car figures. So there's a real irony, but for anyone who really has looked at the history of revolutions, this is a pattern that you see. The other thing, so I think feel free to I'll kind of explain a bit of my observation. Feel free to jump in, Kim. But as the U.S. and the UN have bared down on Haiti, Cherizier's message, Barbecue's message to the other leaders, neighborhood leaders in Port-au-Prince, has increasingly resonated, because all along, and you'll see this in our documentary, in Another Vision, all along his message has been, let's stop fighting with each other and let's unite to have a revolution against the people who are keeping us in these conditions who are paying this guy and that guy and that guy to attack the next neighborhood, who are giving us the bullets. Let's just overturn this whole paradigm.
Turn the
And
guns on them.
exactly. And so that has not always resonated, but as it didn't always resonate, and he would try and it wouldn't go anywhere, and he'd fight with these guys and at the same time make pleas with them and literally get down on a knee and ask and
right.
To the people.
Let me jump in there. And we show that in Intervention versus Revolution, really this process, but it came to a head. It came to a head really right after we finished filming, when Ariel Henry left the country to go sign the final agreement to have Kenyan troops deployed. And he said to those guys, listen, they're coming for me and they might get me, but then they're coming for you. So it's in your interest to join with me. We have the same class interest, basically, that of the proletariat and the lumpen proletariat. Let us join together against this bourgeoisie, which has been pitting us against each other all this time. And it's starting to gel now. It's herding cats. He's not got control. It's not a hierarchical organization, but it is starting to take shape. Yeah, back to you.
Exactly. So you see this process in which the more that the US and the UN and these foreign powers threaten Haiti, they bear down with the threat of this invasion to basically reinforce the status quo of controlled chaos and poverty and exploitation for the masses, and enormous profits and wealth and riches for the tiny elite who live in mansions above Port-au-Prince. And you can see these mansions in our reporting in the piece we did in November 2022, where we flew our drone around and massive mansions in the hills that look like Beverly Hills with swimming pools and helicopter pads. And then you look out, you drive a few minutes and look out into these sprawling slums. So Haiti is not what people, just what people imagine, where it's just sheer poverty of the worst kind. It's intentional, it's impoverished. It's people being impoverished and making huge amounts. So this is the status quo that the foreign powers want, and the local elites, the oligarchy wants to maintain. And as these forces have bear down on Haiti, Cherizier's message has begun to resonate more. And so this whole process of uniting this kind of disparate patchwork of armed groups through these neighborhoods where there's all kinds of bad blood and fighting and history, suddenly it's like, okay, there's something bigger that we all need to focus on. And indeed, last year in 2023, they managed to eject Ariel Henry. When Ariel Henry, the de facto prime minister,
they formed the Vivre Ensemble. Ariel Henry came in February 29th of this year.
Oh yes, you're right. Sorry, that was this year. Yeah. So they earlier this year on February 29th, the Vivre Ensemble, which at that point was kind of seemed to be stillborn, was not really working, and Cherizier was frustrated, and we show that in our most recent documentary in Intervention or Revolution. Intervention versus Revolution. You see Cherizier is still hoping it works out, but it's not really working at that point. And so what happened is, when Ariel Henry, the de facto prime minister appointed by the US, a total finger puppet, flew to Kenya to sign this bilateral agreement to have these Kenyan mercenaries come in to Haiti, that is when Cherizier, Vivre Ensemble went to they attacked the airport as he was coming back, so he could not land, and he was basically ejected from the country. And it ended up being that the new regime that was put in place by the U.S. through an agreement in Kingston, Jamaica, was, they just went along with this legal mumbo jumbo fiction of a bilateral agreement. And these, I just want to show an article that I wrote. Let me just pull it up here, of who these Kenyan mercenaries that the U.S. paid to come in are. I mean, if you, researching for this article was simply shocking. Kenya has death squads in the police that for decades have terrorized, brutalized, murdered, disappeared the population, dissidents of various stripes, to the point where even these death squads, when a member came out and said that they exist, he was disappeared. He was killed. He was disappeared. The UN special rapporteur on extrajudicial executions and torture and disappearances, I think is the term. Kim, okay, stepped away for a second. When he, Kim, real quick, oh, he can't. I don't know if you can hear me. Kim, you with me?
I hear you. I'm with you. I'm with you. Sorry.
Try to avoid letting your microphone rub on your shirt.
Oh, sorry. No, I just had to jump up to get some. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, but it's happening when you're talking too.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's okay. Just so you know. So these death squads are just rampant in Kenya. And in 2009, the UN Special Rapporteur wrote a report calling them death squads. The Kenyan human rights investigators who provided information for that report were murdered right in front of a police station. So, I mean, you're talking about a real nightmare situation in Kenya that still exists to this day. It's still there. So, that's who the U.S. is bribing to come into Haiti. So, with that said, that's kind of the current situation. So I want to we'll give a little bit more. Let's see. I'll give a little bit more context. What we can do is talk about some of the police terror that we've been watching and witnessing, because the whole pretext for this intervention is that there are these gangs that are terrorizing the population, and Port-au-Prince has been taken over. 80% of Port-au-Prince is controlled by gangs, and there was this whole propaganda campaign, and particularly on X, but to say that Haitians are cannibals and led by this guy Barbecue, who's the leader of a cannibal gang, and this was totally false.
Those are lies.
Without going into all the details of how a video of some lunatic gang member in another part of Haiti was filmed eating some burnt flesh, which was horrific. This became suddenly, oh no, that was Barbecue, which it was not Barbecue. And he's called Barbecue because he likes to eat people and burn his victims, which is a narrative that had been laid years before, thanks to Vice. So, in fact, the biggest gang is the Haitian National Police, which is a tool of the United States and the political class in Haiti. And we, Uncaptured Media and Haiti Liberté, got our we were given footage of a police execution of a man in the street in downtown Port-au-Prince. So I'm gonna show just. I don't want this stream to get demonetized or restricted, soft censored on YouTube. So I'm only going to show up to right before the execution takes place. But you can see it. I published it on YouTube. And so this is from the beginning. So if you watch, okay, you see the red circle, you can see this. There's someone who just came out of his house and he's in his neighborhood here.
Maybe summoned by the cop whose doors open.
Possibly. It could be. That very well could be.
We don't know. Yeah.
Oh, and you can actually see, I didn't even notice this before. You can see the turret on top of the vehicle actually following him. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the turret is, so let's show that again. So you see him walking, the turret actually turns to follow him. Okay, so he disappears out of the frame for a second, and then you'll see him pop up right there. I put the red circle on there so you can see him just walking through this mess. Okay, he's calmly walking towards the police vehicle. Mm-hmm. Okay, and he goes to the passenger side, and there's the police right there. Okay, you can see he's talking to the police. Doesn't seem like he presents any kind of danger or threat. And I think that's where I should probably end it, is right there, because that's where we're going to get busted with,
Right.
by YouTube. But at that moment, the police officer sitting in his vehicle shoots this man
From the vehicle.
From the vehicle, he shoots him. And then the man falls down on the ground and tries to get away. And as he's trying to get away, the police officer steps out of his vehicle and walks closer to the man and executes him, splatters the man's blood and brains all over the pavement. And then he proceeds to pick his pocket. He goes through his pockets to see what he can find. He takes whatever was in his pocket, presumably a wallet, throws it in the police vehicle. And then the next scene is them driving away, and then they drive back and run over the guy's dead body. They run over the corpse. So just total disrespect after they murder and rob him.
Yeah.
So this is the criminal activity that you see from the Haitian National Police, who we are being told are the good guys who the U.S. just has to support to take out the gangs. So whatever you think of Vivant Ensemble, if you think they're revolutionaries, if you think they're gang members, or somewhere in between, if you're not sure, you can be absolutely certain that the biggest gang members, the biggest gang in Haiti, is the Haitian National Police, which is funded by the United States.
And the Vivant Ensemble has been saying this repeatedly in the live streams they do on TikTok. For those who speak Creole, they can go on Chrisla's TikTok, or Jimmy Cherizier, who's playing whack-a-mole with TikTok because they keeps getting censored, but he pops up somewhere else. And they've explained repeatedly how the cops are massacring people in the poor neighborhoods. And now it's not just the Vivant Ensemble in this video that are telling the story. The Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, one of the most
I'll pull that up, Kim. I'll pull that up. Hold on a sec. Okay. Yeah, I have that queued up. So exactly. I mean, I can just pull up the article from Doctors Without Borders.
Right.
Here we go.
I did an interview with Turkish TV with the director of Doctors Without Borders there. The police stopped a car. The doctors in it said, "No, you can't take these wounded that we have in the back out. They're going to the hospital." They threatened them with rape. There was women involved, or death. And finally, they threw tear gas into the car. The people had to get out, and they took the occupants, 3 of them, from the car, and they shot them. 2 of them died. 1 might have escaped. This is this is the death squads who are fighting the Vivant Ensemble.
Exactly. I mean, and this conduct, this is Doctors Without Borders is the most mainstream medical NGO that exists. I mean, this is not some radical group. I mean, this is, the establishment, and the Haitian police officers, along with armed vigilantes, are stopping vehicles. I mean, according to this press release from Doctors Without Borders, we can go through it. Police officers have stopped MSF vehicles multiple times, directly threatened MSF staff members, including by threatening death and rape. Okay, this follows an attack on an MSF ambulance that resulted in the execution of at least 2 patients and physical harm to our staff. And these are repeated incidents. Okay, there is so what they say is that so here are the repeated incidents. November 12th, police threatened to kill Doctors Without Borders staff in the near future. Okay, here's another verbal assault. Here is a SWAT team on November 17th threatened to kill a patient on the spot. And then here's another threat Here's on November 18th. And let's see, maybe it might be here. Okay, I think this is the okay. Killing of at least 2 patients stopped by members of a vigilante group and law enforcement officers. So the attempt to arrest the patients, firing shots in the air, the police and vigilantes slashed the tires, tear gassed the Doctors Without Borders personnel inside the vehicle to force them out, then took the wounded patients a short distance away outside the hospital grounds, where at least 2 of them were executed.
Right. The third one may have escaped, did escape, they said.
Okay. So this is the conduct of the Haitian National Police, who, again, we're told are just outmanned, undergunned. This is the biggest gang in Haiti. These are the killers. So, you'll never hear about this. I mean, even though it's Doctors Without Borders, you will never hear about this on CNN or in the New York Times. They just won't really touch it. So, this just escapes all mainstream coverage. Even though, again, Doctors Without Borders. So now I want to turn to show my maybe we should we show each I think could be useful. Hold on, let me just get through this.
I just before we show your thing, Ben, I just would like to say a word about the vigilantes.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, I think that's worth even exploring for a few minutes. I was thinking that because we're, this is the kind of bois-calais phenomenon.
Yeah. Let me make a brief presentation. Indulge me for a minute. In 1987, before Dan was born. No, I was.
Yes, I was a whopping 2 years old.
2 years old. Mm-hmm. I was in the town of Petit Gouave. We were filming 16 millimeter film. It was shortly after the fall of the Duvalier dictatorship, and the bourgeoisie was taking advantage of the chaos to import things into the country without any duty. And so they were using foreign ports outside of Port-au-Prince, such as that in Petit Gouave, where they had, a boat off the shore and people bringing stuff in on rowboats, refrigerators on a rowboat teetering. And we're filming this. And the bourgeois who were running the port saw us and they panicked. They ran in with their big sombreros flopping and said, "Get those people. They're trying to take your jobs." And the crowd on the dock immediately went ballistic. They surrounded us with machetes being wielded, stuffing straw in our pockets and taking out matches. And they were going to burn us and kill us. And we managed to extract ourselves from that situation. I think they took pause because we had blanc foreigners, whites, myself included, in the crew. And we escaped the scene. But it was just to show you how a mob violence can quickly get out of control. And even though you're trying to do something to help the people, to show them, listen, these guys are fleecing you by, avoiding any tariffs. So now let's fast forward 40 years to the bois-calais movement. And it's very important to remember dialectics here, where things can become their opposite. The bois-calais movement means a movement where they were taking justice into their own hands. Mobs, similar to that, would go after criminal gangs. And this was in a period when Jimmy Cherizier, the leader of the Vivre Ensemble, had a group called the G9, which was fighting the criminal gangs, which were in a group called the GPEP. And they've been battling most of the last 3 years, 3 years since 2020, when G9 was formed. GPEP was formed the day after. And so at that point, it was kind of a spontaneous progressive movement, trying to stop the predations of the criminal gangs, which were kidnapping, extorting, raping, etc. And Jimmy Cherizier, in fact, supported the bois-calais at that moment. But now things have radically changed. He has joined with those groups, is trying to reform them, has basically said no more kidnapping, no more extortion, no more crimes against the people. We're turning all our guns on the bourgeoisie now. We're not going to have anything to do against the people. And but what the bourgeoisie has done is they've co-opted the Bois Calais name or brand, and they've funded groups, basically they're auxiliaries of the police, giving them guns, giving them money, giving them ammunition to set up barricades. And this is to basically intercept people coming from any vivre ensemble area and execute them on the spot. And even if they're carrying a Bible or going to church or going to see a relative, one, and two, to choke off supply lines or revenue streams for the vivre ensemble, because a lot of what they do, a lot the way the FARC did in Colombia, for example, they'd have a war tax on any traffic going along the roads through their territory. This is what the vivre ensemble does. They stop traffic and they say, okay, you got to give us $10 or $20 or whatever, so they can pay their soldiers, et cetera. So that's their revenue stream, especially since the kidnapping and all that are supposed to be off the table. This is the same co-optation the bourgeoisie always does. I remember growing up in the 60s and 70s, we had the peace generation, those resisting the Vietnam War. Well, they turned that into the Pepsi generation. They co-opted it and gave you the Partridge Family and I'd like to teach the world to sing. You can take BLM, for example, which started as a genuine movement, but then it's now become a corporate hashtag. So this is the kind of co-optation that happens. And so you'll hear Bois Calais and the Vigilantes, it's the people rising up. No, this is the bourgeoisie is paying people to fight the vivre ensemble, which has the bourgeoisie panicked, scared, and on the run. And so that's just to explain about the vigilante question that you're going to hear raised and people saying Bois Calais, Bois Calais. It's not the old Bois Calais, it's the new Bois Calais 2.0, which is the bourgeoisie-owned Bois Calais.
Maybe, Kim, the other thing we should address, actually, I think, is I've gotten comments, maybe a handful of comments. I mean, I'll say very few, but regarding the footage that we got of this execution, that, of course, if you see in the top left corner, it says EZO satellite. And so anyone who pays attention to Haiti knows who EZO is. He has been one of the major criminal armed group leaders, but is now part of Vivre Ensemble. And so one of the comments that I got was, we actually cut the footage so it would be seen as so you could see closer. And it's vertical. So for, when most people are watching on their phone, so instead of this kind of horizontal video with everything, it's vertical. And so you basically had to cut the sides off. And people are saying, oh, well, if people knew where this footage was from, who filmed it? And of course, this was a drone belonging to Vivre Ensemble, clearly to EZO. And so, to me, it shouldn't matter where the footage come from, where the footage was filmed. If it was filmed by the devil himself, it's a police execution. It's a crime, and that's all that matters. It doesn't. Well,
we look at we look at WikiLeaks collateral murder video. It was filmed by a helicopter gunship's camera. That doesn't make it any less real and tragic and disgusting. So the source, and a word about EZO. Just in passing to the people who made that comment. On November 9th, I was contacted by a Mary Noel nun who said, listen, I have some friends down in Delma 60. She has 2 grandsons and 2 other kids that she's taking care of who were kidnapped on their way to school along with their driver, and they're holding a journalist too. They're asking $100,000 per head for the kids. What's going on? Can you find out about this? I wrote to Cherizier and said, listen, what's going on? Can you find out what's going on? I didn't hear. But 4 days later, he had a video and he was standing there with the kids, driver and the journalist, and said, these people are all going free. We don't do this anymore. A group of Vivre Ensemble did it. They're being sanctioned. We don't tolerate this anymore. They're being sanctioned and these people are free to go. And we're sorry it happened. And this happened in part because it was done by a guy called Kempes Sanon, who was the Bel Air guy who Jimmy Cherizier was fighting for many years, who the same people who are probably writing that used to defend, saying, oh, Cherizier is attacking Belair, poor Belair. No, Belair was Kempes Sanon, who was a convicted kidnapper, had been in jail for life, but escaped. In any case, the Vivre Ensemble members got on the phone, and Izo said to him, he said, listen, Kempes, if you keep those people, it's going to be fatal for you. You better not do that. You can't do that anymore. None of us can do that. So that's Izo. Now, I'm not going to pass my hand through fire for Izo. I don't know him. I've never met him. And he's done some bad things, which one day he'll have to make amends for. But the point is that Jimmy Cherizier's moral authority is being gradually imposed on these guys. And
Right.
Stan, you and I did it back in April with my favorite Arab, or I forget his name, the YouTuber who Lamor Saint-Jour had kidnapped. And we called Jimmy and said, listen, are you aware of this? He said, let me find out. And he got the guy freed after telling Lamor Saint-Jour, you can't do this, dude. You got to let him go.
Yeah, your fellow Arab, that YouTuber.
Your fellow Arab, yeah.
Yeah, who showed up in Haiti and got kidnapped. And then when I saw what was going on X, Twitter, I saw a post, something he'd been kidnapped. I sprung into action, called Kim, called Barbecue, and Barbecue called Lamont Saint-Jour from 400 Mauzo, and basically got him released. And it was about the stupidest thing that anyone could do, is just fly into. He actually flew into the DR, crossed over into Haiti, and just tried to make his way down through from the north to Port-au-Prince, which is going through all kinds of terrain controlled by all kinds of different groups, and is just asking to get kidnapped. So the funny thing is, when we got him released, we were accused of orchestrating some kind of operation to make Barbecue look like a good guy, and then this guy, your fellow Arab, this YouTuber, he didn't even credit us. He did these, this kind of sort of first-person documentary series, which I'm sure he made a whole ton of money off of. He didn't even credit us, and then he DM'd me right when he was released, I guess, and said, "Yeah, you were correct. What you said is correct. Barbecue got me out." But then in his documentary, he didn't give us any credit. He didn't. So as far as I can tell, he was just pretty much dishonest about, at least our role in getting him out.
Well, I think we gave him the heads up. I think when Cherizier would have found out about it, he would have done the same thing. So I'm not sure it's because we asked, but I'm not.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. I'm not saying it's because we asked, but yes, certainly when as Cherizier's position is in principle, as a matter of principle, is against kidnapping, and that's why he did it, not because it was a favor to us, but we did have a role in alerting Cherizier, which then got him out, and that I think was just totally covered up and ignored, which is kind of funny. But so let's take a look at my speech to the UN Security Council. Hopefully we're not interrupted by ads. It's about 8 minute and 22 second speech. So here's what I said at the UN Security Council on Wednesday, November 20th.
1772nd meeting, a 90-second meeting, of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is question concerning Haiti. The agenda is adopted. I now give the floor to Mr. Dan Cohen.
Distinguished members of the Council, I'm an investigative journalist and documentary filmmaker, one of the few independent journalists to report from Haiti in recent years. My most recent film is titled Haiti, Intervention versus Revolution. The UN Security Council is being asked to approve deployment of another so-called peacekeeping mission to Haiti. Let us recall that Haiti has been under US and UN occupation for 21 of the last 30 years, from 1994 to 2000 by UNME, UNSME, UNTME, and MIPONU, and from 2004 to 2019 by MINUSTA and MINUJUST. However, those 2+ decades of occupation never achieved their stated goals. In fact, UN soldiers, under the familiar pretext of combating gangs, in one operation that became emblematic of their conduct, wantonly fired some 22,000 bullets into the slum of Cité Soleil, killing residents in their ramshackle houses. These UN troops were also responsible for crimes against the Haitian people, from the introduction of cholera to the rape of children, for which they were never held accountable. Now the Haitian people are being asked once again to let UN troops occupy their nation. Yet it is clear that there is another agenda at play. The United States government, my government, seeks to impose its will on Haiti with or without the approval of this country. Don't take my word for it. In December 2021, China and Russia voted to limit the Security Council mandate for U.S. trainers to the Haitian National Police to only 9 months rather than the 12 months that Washington sought. This outraged U.S. Senator Robert Menendez, then the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. During a briefing to his committee, Menendez rhetorically asked a State Department official, "Why do you think China and Russia stopped us?" He answered his own question, saying, "They want total unrest in the hemisphere. That's their whole purpose, and this hemisphere is creating instability." He added, "At some point, we have to think about how to circumvent that." In 2023, Washington indeed found a way to circumvent the UN Security Council when it was prevented from once again using this body, as it did in 1994 and 2004, to further its interventionist goals in Haiti. It concocted the Multinational Security Support Mission, or MSS, which U.S. Representative to the UN, Jeffrey De Laurentiis, called a new way of preserving global peace and security. Indeed, the United States has enacted legislation known as the Global Fragility Act, which might be better described as the Crumbling Empire Act. This bipartisan legislation, signed into law by President Trump in 2019 and continued under the Biden administration, seeks to combine military force and soft power to push back against the growing influence of China and Russia, which Washington, still applying its long discredited Imperial Monroe Doctrine, sees as a threat. Haiti is the pilot case for this new strategy, which the U.S. openly stated it seeks to apply to so-called fragile states around the world, beginning with Libya, Mozambique, Papua New Guinea, and Benin, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Guinea, and Togo in West Africa. This intervention assumes that the Haitian people are incapable of solving their own problems, an insulting notion to those who know Haitian history. An intervention would be first and foremost a violation of Haitian sovereignty, but even more so, it would empower and support the forces which have carried out the most heinous acts of violence in Haiti today. My outlet, Uncaptured Media, in collaboration with Haiti Liberté, recently published footage we obtained of a Haitian National Police officer summarily executing an unarmed civilian, picking his pocket, and then running over his corpse with an armored vehicle provided by the United States, ostensibly to fight gangs. This is not an isolated incident. A September 30th report by the panel of experts established pursuant to Security Council Resolution 2653, addressed to the Security Council's president, noted that from January 1st to March 31st, 2024, 590 civilians unrelated to gangs were killed or injured during police operations against gangs. The document cited reports that police officers had carried out extrajudicial executions, as seen in the footage we published. One must also note that the Kenyan police forces sent to Haiti under the auspices of the MSS have an abysmal human rights record going back decades. A 2009 report by the UN Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial, Summary, or Arbitrary Executions, Philip Alston, found, quote, death squads operating on the order of senior police officials, end quote, killed 1,113 people following Kenya's December 2007 elections. Little has changed since then. Even the U.S. State Department's Kenya 2018 rights report noted, quote, all unlawful and politically motivated killings, forced disappearances, torture, harsh and life-threatening prison conditions, end quote. Any UN operation would work hand in glove with these corrupt Haitian and Kenyan police officers. The proposed UN intervention, like that of the MSS, is a violation of Haitian law and the UN Charter. Haiti has no elected government, but a regime effectively appointed by the outgoing U.S. Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. Interim President Leslie Voltaire, who most recently requested UN military intervention, has zero legal authority, like former Prime Ministers Ariel Henry, Gary Coney, and now Didier Fioseme. Not one of them has ever been elected, nor holds any respect or legitimacy. One thing, real quick, let me just pause. I just love that the cameraman chose to. I mean, I assume this was a conscious decision that as I'm dressing down these this phony unelected regime, they actually pan to the Haitian diplomat and then the British. And when I was talking about the U.S. earlier, they actually showed the U.S. diplomat. So I think that just must be how they do it. Is if you're talking about them, then they show it. So hats off to the the man operating the camera system there. Okay, we'll go back to it. Outside of Washington, D.C. and this building. That such an illegal intervention is even being considered is an insult and affront to the Haitian people. From my numerous visits to Haiti in recent years, it is clear that the overwhelming majority of the Haitian people do not want another intervention. In 2023, as this council considered whether to bless the MSS, Haitian popular organizations hung banners across main thoroughfares in Port-au-Prince saying no to intervention and reminding the population of the cholera outbreak it introduced. The only sector of the Haitian population that supports an intervention are the tiny few that stand to benefit from it, who disproportionately live outside of the country and who profit from the status quo of controlled chaos. They're the corrupt oligarchs who funded the armed groups to do their bidding and have now lost control of them. And those who Washington's soft power arms like USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy have groomed as its preferred future leaders of Haiti. For anyone who naively believes that foreign armed intervention would benefit the Haitian people, one only needs to examine the results of previous interventions and remember the old adage, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. In fact, this proposed intervention could be worse. Haiti is awash in military-grade weapons imported from the United States thanks to lax gun laws and porous borders. An intervention would meet stiff armed resistance and would cause bloodshed to the Haitian population and among UN troops. Haiti's history is marked by its resistance to foreign invasions from its glorious 1804 revolution until today. Haitian sovereignty must be respected, but first reestablished by the Haitian people themselves. Let Haitians, not foreign bodies, choose their leaders and their future. Thank you. Yeah, there we go. So there's my address to the UN Security Council regarding this U.S. proposal for an intervention, which is really an invasion of Haiti. Kim, I'll ask you for your comments in a minute, but I mean, a few things I want to address. Again, hats off to the cameraman who showed those diplomats. The British, I thought, scratching his head. The Haitian just, sitting word. There. The Haitian regime guy just kind of taking it, and what can he do? But if what you said earlier on in the stream is true, that had some kind of impact, that this intervention won't happen, then I pray that's the case.
Well, it'll come to it down to me to whether the Russia and China are going to veto it, because I think the U.S. on the count the speeches we heard, they may have the votes for it, maybe not unanimous, but I think it would require a veto from Russia or China, which I hope they would do to stop this just constant usage of the UN as a proxy for U.S. imperialist maintenance.
Right, exactly. So the other thing I want to talk about is, I kind of gave a list of different.
Oh, and by the way, the same day they vetoed the Gaza ceasefire.
Right, exactly. Just a few hours earlier, the U.S. was the country that got that again vetoed a ceasefire in
14-1. Yeah.
Right, in Gaza. So, the U.S. standing alone as the defenders and enablers of the Gaza genocide. So I want to. So one of the other things I mentioned in my address was the tiny few who support this intervention are those who profit from it, who disproportionately live outside of the country, those who benefit from the controlled chaos, and this one in particular, the figures who the U.S. soft power outlets, U.S. aid, and the National Endowment for Democracy have groomed as the future leaders. This is like the liberal elites, in particular, maybe Gen Z types who have who want to take power and who really have no idea what's going on, but just want power. And they're the most vociferous in demanding them. And here is a perfect example of exactly who I was talking about, who lashed out at me on Twitter. And so her name is Velina Charlier. She says, Dan Cohen is a champion at defending barbecue. The same Charlier sanctioned by the UN. Seems like the UN Security Council and UN need a proper briefing about who, I guess she means they, allow to speak. Or they're just hypocrites who don't really give an F about us. So Velina Charlier, let me see if I can pull up my response to her. Here we go. Okay, so I quote tweeted her. In my speech to the UN Security Council, I stated that the only sector of the Haitian population that supports an intervention are the tiny few who stand to benefit from it, including those who Washington's soft power arms like USAID and the NED have groomed as its preferred future leaders of Haiti. Velina Charlier is the textbook example of exactly that. She is on the payroll of the U.S. government. She works for a company called Digicel, and Digicel is funded by USAID. This is one of the most corrupt organizations, businesses in Haiti. So she's getting money from the U.S. and has a second passport. She's also a Canadian citizen. And she is calling for an intervention. Now, when I say she has no idea what she's talking about, this was an incredible moment that I'll show you. And I was actually, so this is from a hearing here in Washington that I attended back in September 29th, 2022, in which they were discussing basically what to do about this terrible gang problem in Haiti, and before the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and they had invited a handful of figures from Haiti, these kind of liberal interventionist tools, to give testimony. Among them were the top human rights figures, so-called human rights figures from this phony human rights outfit called the National Network for the Defense of Human Rights, commonly known in Haiti as the RNDDH. We've covered them extensively in our documentaries, in our reporting. This is just a poison machine, a lie factory that works on behalf of the empire, funded by the NED, funded by the Alexander Soros's now Open Society Foundation, the American Jewish World Service, which is not Jewish at all, is actually first and foremost funded by Eric Schmidt, the ex-Google CEO and Pentagon contractor. Somehow they just call themselves Jewish. I don't know, which I find totally offensive as a Jew. But this is Velina Charlier. Velina Charlier was there, and this is California Representative Sarah Jacobs, I think is her name. Sarah Jacobs, yes, asking these Haitians who have been invited to give testimony about the gangs are so bad, if they know what the Global Fragility Act is. And maybe I'll just say the Global Fragility Act, before I show this, is the US's 10-year plan, which I spoke about in my speech, 10-year plan for getting a military presence a military occupation into Haiti. And that and Haiti, again, is the pilot case. This is the place where they want to do it first, and then they want to
bilateral agreement. Yeah.
Yes, through it has to be through a so-called bilateral agreement where they basically get a puppet unelected regime like these this Haitian council that they've installed to agree to it. And that's what Ariel Henry was doing, was signing this bilateral agreement when he was, well, with the Kenyans, but when he was ousted. So this whole thing is based on this total charade of democracy where the U.S. just appoints someone to sign the agreement with them. So this is supposed to be the new way of dealing of the U.S. helping Haiti. And here's Valina, them asking the Haitians who were invited about it.
The Biden administration has been working to implement the Global Fragility Act passed by this body, which is intended to address the root causes of violence and instability in recipient countries over 10 years. I hope that Haiti's selection as a priority country will be a well-timed opportunity to pivot the U.S. strategy in Haiti. So my question is to Mrs. Charlier, Ms. Ducena, and Mr. Pierre Villus. What do you know about the Global Fragility Act and how it will be implemented? And have your organizations or organizations you know been consulted on this strategy?
No, we haven't been consulted on it, and we don't know much about it.
What a joke.
And I'm seeing head nods from the others, Representative Jacobs, in case you can't see them.
Thank you. Well, that is very concerning. The Biden administration.
Yeah.
So it's too bad that
bunch of puppets.
it's just too bad that you can't see me. I was at that hearing. I'm just off to the where are we? Off to the left of the screen. I'm there and I'm literally like slapping my knees just watching this moment that these people have no idea what's going on around them. They're just, we know we want a foreign invasion because, we'll then sit on top of the burning heap of destruction and death. And so Valina Charlier right there, you can see has no idea what's going on. She's a complete fraud. She's been invited to give testimony and she doesn't even know what's going on around her. None of them do. Neither does Rosie Auguste, who is now the new face of this phony human rights group, the
RNDDH.
Yes, the RNDDH, which I discussed before. So these people are just finger puppets for the U.S. government and its plans to occupy Haiti. So,
and if I could just make one precision, Dan, the thing is they can't really bring in the Global Fragility Act with this appointed government, which they know it's not going to fly very far. Their idea is they got to get an elected government. And so that's really the role. And that's why they have to rely on a proxy. Because in 1915, the U.S. came in, they took over the country, and then they found somebody, a guy called Siddharth Tiganov, a senator, to invite them in. So it was too ugly. Everybody saw it. All history said, what a joke. They're trying to avoid that now. So they have to get a proxy to put in place this council, which will hold an election, which will elect somebody who is going to be a U.S. puppet. And then that person will sign the Global Fragility Act. So they want to get the optics of an election in there.
Exactly. So, these are this is where Haiti finds itself. And, maybe Kim, for kind of the last bit of our discussion here, we can bring this into I know you only have a few minutes left, and we should wrap up.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to go.
Yeah, I got to go pretty quick, but I could say a last word.
Give your last thoughts. Where are we? Where do you see things going in light of the decline of U.S. empire overall?
Yeah. Well, to me, what's happening is the Biden administration in their last lame duck 2 months are trying to ram in everything in their program that they can. We see them sending the attack missiles into Russia. We see them putting landmines in Ukraine. And now we see in Haiti, they're trying to rush this thing to get it into the UN Security Council, to have them pass it and become a UN mission. And this is because they see Trump coming and they're not sure what he's going to do. He's unpredictable. Now, it could cut both ways. Trump may say, let the Haitians figure it out. But he's got enough deep state people in there, like Marco Rubio in particular, who are going to hold to the program. And what I fear is that we could end up seeing the 82nd Airborne being sent in by Trump, because he's like, skip all this UN stuff. We're just sending our people. America first, we're going to do it. And so we'll see. But on the other hand, I'm not even saying that's going to be a cakewalk, because, the Vivant Somme is growing in strength. And, this is where it is really intervention versus revolution. We're going to see if the empire, whether it's under Trump, is going to be able to stamp out this, what I think is Haiti's second social revolution after that of 1804.
All right, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. So thank you, Kim. If you got to run, then
Okay.
thank you for joining. And I'll just mention, Kim said that one possibility is that the U.S. sends in the 82nd Airborne. The U.S. sends in some kind of direct invasion, because all of these complicated maneuvers to send in a proxy force to get the UN to rubber stamp the occupation, so it's the UN that does it. So it has this multilateral veneer to it, when it's really just good old, Uncle Sam's imperialism. Well, that's
the globalist style. Yeah.
Yeah. What the U.S. Dan Foote, who was the U.S. special envoy to Haiti until he resigned back in 2022, in the summer of 2022.
Dan, I'll let you close it out with all this explanation.
Sure.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks again, Kim.
So, bye.
Good dinner, man.
So what Dan Foote was the U.S. special envoy to Haiti, briefly appointed by the Biden administration. He resigned in the summer of 2022. And Dan Foote claimed that he was resigning because of the treatment of Haitian migrants at the border. There were those photos of Border Patrol rounding up, chasing, even whipping, though I don't know. Conservatives claim that it wasn't actually whipping. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, but the pictures looked horrible. Whipping and attacking Haitian migrants who were under a bridge in, I think, Del Rio, Texas. And Dan Foote claimed to be resigning in moral outrage and disgust about that. Now, that was clearly a farce. Dan Foote has been involved in military and trainings in Iraq and Colombia, and seeing all kinds of nasty stuff, and never had any, never professed any moral qualms about that. Now, what Dan Foote actually was the reason Dan Foote actually resigned was to throw his weight behind what is called the Montana Accord, which is basically a group it's the elite opposition in Haiti, and they had grouped around this thing called the Montana Accord, which was the liberal alternative to the regime of Ariel Henry, who the U.S. had basically backed in the after the assassination of the president Jovenel Moise. And so the U.S. was grooming this Montana Accord and wanted to basically bring them in. But there was kind of a division among the government, because in the U.S. government, because Ariel Henry was so reliable. He was doing exactly what the U.S. wanted. And they said, why change horses? This guy's doing what we want. Who cares what anyone thinks? And in fact, in November 2022, when the United States and International Monetary Fund imposed fuel price hikes, they removed fuel subsidies for Haiti. Brian Nichols, the Secretary of State, the Undersecretary for Latin America, he said, well, we're supporting Ariel Henry because we've wanted to remove these fuel subsidies for some time, and he's doing it. So he's being a good puppet. That's why we support him. So Dan Foote goes to a rally here in Washington, D.C. in front of the White House in solidarity with the Haitian migrants who had been rounded up and deported. And he's giving a speech. And And he talks about how actually we have to have a military intervention. And the best way to do it is sort of the Obama style, have a proxy this whole way through the UN, have other countries do it. And he said, if that doesn't happen, then the US is going to send 25,000 troops. So that's what he told me. Send these special forces trainers, a few dozen guys, Green Beret types, which that's what they specialize in, is training and organizing basically foreign forces. So what they did in Afghanistan, Iraq, for example, in Colombia, and this is Dan Foot's specialty, or we're going to have a full, complete, direct U.S. invasion into Haiti. So this, as this whole multilateral veneer falls away, this is what we're looking at into the future. So we have President Trump coming in. How will he handle that? Well, we certainly saw on X all of the basically Trump, Musk influencers demonizing. Several months ago, we saw them coming up with this whole phony story about Haitian cannibals, that there's a cannibal gang in Haiti led by this cannibal barbecue, which was totally phony. And that was clearly aimed at demonizing so they could pave the way for an invasion, and also creating a hysteria about migrants rather than looking at the real root causes of the issue, which is the bipartisan constant destabilization of Haiti. And that's what none of them would discuss. So what will Trump do when it comes to it, that his, the Pentagon goes to Pete Hegseth or whoever it is, assuming he's confirmed, and says, we got to go take out this guy barbecue? Will he do it? So I think that's the moment we're in. I mean, okay. I'll answer. If anyone wants to ask questions, I have about 10 more minutes before.
But first this. We're taught to work hard for 35 to 40 years. Save your money, then live off your savings. Unfortunately, there are too many threats undermining that the Russians fired at the end of last week that seems to have the West scratching their heads.
Judge, we've talked about possible game changers with various missiles and tanks and F-16s and so forth. None of those happen to be game changers. This one is. What the Russians have done is to show us that they could, without any nuclear weapon on top of these missiles, that they can destroy very, very hardened sites with very new technology that it seems U.S. specialists were blissfully unaware of. In other words, they've stolen a march with very high technology, which can destroy hard targets with new technology that is more advanced than the old MERV system, which was, as you'll recall, the multiple independent targetable reentry vehicles that were attached to ICBMs. These are similar, but they're independent and they're going so fast they don't even need any TNT on them. They just demolish what they had. And the reports out of the Dnipro indicate that thing was totally demolished.
Did CIA or did the intelligence community in general know that the Russians had this piece of equipment?
I can't be sure, of course, Judge, but given the shock, given the expressions of alarm and just total confusion about it, I think the chances are no. The Russians didn't start building this thing until about a year ago. It was sort of put together with lots of parts from ICBMs and MRBMs and so forth with new technology. The deal here, Judge, is that Putin tried to warn the U.S. he tried to say, look, you're going to build these ABM systems. That's fine. They don't work. We're not going to waste our money. What we're going to do is build alternative systems that you wouldn't even dream of. Now, he said that to a bunch of Western journalists in June of 2016. A year later, 2 years later, on March 1st, 2018, he did a show and tell for his State of the Nation address. Big screens showing these new weapons that had been developed since the U.S. turned Russia down on any agreement to restrain them.
Now, I reported on those advanced weapons several times, and the U.S. media said those were only videos, and Putin was lying and bluffing, and he didn't absolutely have those weapons. That was a lie.
Now, no one should be surprised that these have come to fruition now. And the most devastating one is this missile that was used against Dnipro and destroyed this whole facility, which ironically, not so ironically, I suppose, was devoted to making missiles. Okay, so the Russians can strike at will. And the big deal, of course, is there is no anti-aircraft, anti-missile. There is no.
No, the most devastating one is the Poseidon. The Poseidon drone submarine that he showed. That if any coast, if it pull up on the East Coast, and the submarine releases missile, it's gonna send a tsunami wave, gonna wipe out the East Coast. If it pull up on the West Coast, it can't be detected and it can't be stopped. If the Poseidon drone pull up on the West Coast and shoot its missile, it's gonna do a tsunami and wipe out the whole West Coast. Now they said this was a lie and he didn't have it. Well, they said that too about the weapon he just used in Ukraine. I don't believe these people know what they're talking about, and they are playing with our lives.
No defense against these things, so much so that in a stroke of a little bit of hubris, Putin said, look, we're going to let you know. I'm going to let you know before we fire the next one, so you can get your civilians out of the way. And we don't care if you have advance notice. Hell, there's nothing you can do anyway. So we'll get your civilians out of the way, and we'll let you know. But this is what's coming if you don't knock it off.
Here's a portion of what President Putin said in 2016, which you just referenced, which you sent us, Ray. Chris, cut number 6.
So here we are today, and they've placed their missile defense system in Romania. Always saying we must protect ourselves from the Iranian nuclear threat. Where's the threat? There is no Iranian nuclear threat. You even have an agreement with them. And the U.S. was the instigator of this agreement where we helped. So the Iranian threat does not exist. But missile defense systems continue to be positioned. That means we were right when we said that they are lying to us.
That means we were right when we said that they are lying to us. Now, that's 2016. That is before Trump scrapped the agreement he refers to with Iran, and before Trump scrapped the INF, a decision I think Trump's people probably regret in light of the firing of this hypersonic missile the other day. Your thoughts?
Well, Trump's people might regret it, but the military-industrial complex is rubbing their hands with glee. Now they have to catch up, Judge. Now they have to match the Russians. The problem is they're about 10 years behind on such technology. What's interesting about that little interview, Putin was talking to correspondents from the West who were in St. Petersburg for an economic summit, okay? Gathered them together. And the first thing he said to them was, no, look, I don't expect you to report this. I don't even expect you to tell your editors or your publisher about this session. I got to tell you anyway, man to man. And then he goes into this business about these sites that are being put in Romania and Poland. And Romania was the first. And he said, look, we can't tell what's in those capsules because capsules have caps on them, right? They could be ballistic missiles. They could be cruise missiles. Don't try to make us believe they're ABM missiles against Iran because you just signed an agreement where Iran's out of the picture there. That was then, okay? So as you correctly point out, instead of sort of saying, okay, let's talk about this, what happened with Trump, and Putin makes a point of saying Trump did this. Trump decided to leave the one treaty that destroyed a whole class of medium and intermediate range missiles, namely the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, signed or begun in 1987 when Gorbachev persuaded Reagan this would be a good idea, and we told Reagan that we could verify it, right? And then Trump got out of it 32 years later, before he went out into the Western sunset. Actually, he didn't, did he? Before he left office in 2019. So these bedrock stability instruments that were cautiously and thoroughly negotiated were thrown into the trash can. When I say two, of course, I refer to the first one that Junior Bush got out of. That was the one I was involved in personally, the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty,
Right.
which before Bush left it was the linchpin for security, mutual security for 30 years. So 30 years for the ABM Treaty, 32 years for the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, and that's where we're left. Last little thing here, he talked about Romania. That was the first base. Now it's Poland. Poland just advertised, oh, they have a base too, with these same capsules, with the caps on them. And the Russians have made it clear that would be a first likely target if they decide to hit such bases, U.S. bases in places like Poland.
Here's President Putin on Friday, Ray, talking about this very new weapon system, the Oreshnik. It's about 2 minutes long, but in translation, of course, but very, very much worth listening to. Chris, cut number one.
The Oreshnik missile system isn't simply an efficient hypersonic weapon system. Thanks to its power, particularly in the case of its massive use in combination with other precision long-range weapons that Russia has, the results of its use against enemy targets would be comparable in effect, and its power to strategic weapons. Although, in fact, the Oreshnik system is not a strategic weapon. In any case, it is not an intercontinental ballistic missile. No one in the world has such weapons yet, as we know, as you know. Sooner or later, other leading countries will also get them. We are aware that they are already under development. But this will not happen tomorrow, or in a year, or even 2 years. While we have this system now, I will add that there are no means of counteracting such a missile. No means of intercepting it. In the world today, they don't exist. And I will emphasize once again, we will continue testing the latest system. Considering the special strength of this weapon, its power, it will be put into service in the strategic missile forces. In addition to the Oreshnik system, several similar systems are currently being developed in Russia for further testing. Based on the results of the testing, this weapon will also go into serial production. That is, we are developing a whole line of medium and shorter range systems.
The new missile could be fitted with nuclear and conventional warheads. It can reach targets across the entirety of Europe.
Again, all of this is a surprise to MI6, CIA, Mossad, whoever they rely on, the Five Eyes, all these super intelligence agencies that capture every keystroke on every desktop and mobile device, and they didn't know about this.
Well, Judge, it's really hard for me to tell. I suspect that some assiduous analysts, such as we used to have at the CIA, would have been watching this very closely, would have tried to advise Blinken and Sullivan and President to the degree he was advisable that this was in the works, that they were working on this. But there's no indication that that actually happened. And that may be simply a function of the intelligence community always telling the president and their uppers what they want to hear and not what they don't want to hear. So that's possible. The system is so corrupted that even the good analysts might not get through to these folks. The reality is it happened now, okay? And so much for Russia being a glorified gas station with rockets, huh? So much for that. The Russians have shown that they're masters at this kind of technology. The alloys and all the other special things that go into the building these missiles are really quite advanced. And I have Ted Postal and Scott Ritter and others telling me that, look, this is a game changer. And the next move, of course, is, well, will the French shoot their scalps into Kursk? Will there be more storm shadows or attackums? I imagine there probably will. Will Putin overreact? I don't think so, unless you consider this hit on Dnipro overreaction. It's a very targeted reaction. And Scott has told me and others that the U.S. was given forewarning that there was not a nuclear weapon on this thing. And they were told, look, we're going to do this, and you're gonna know about it now, and we're not going to put a nuclear weapon on this. Now, my concern, of course, is that if the tables were reversed, well, Russia has already said that any nuclear capable instrument like a F-16, they're going to shoot down right away because they have to assume that it's nuclear armed. So we have a Pentagon now or a SAC out there in Omaha that says, oh, the Russians told us this, I got a nuclear one. So relax, guys, Russia, trust the Russians. I don't think so. So the volatility of this thing, especially with that admiral out there in Omaha saying, we can fight and win a nuclear war. My God, people are on tenterhooks, and that includes the Russians and the military advisors that are looking over Putin's shoulder and say, look, this is serious. They didn't know that we have this. What are they going to do to react, particularly within the next 2 months when Biden or Blinken, who is running things, in my view, is still around?
Is there any question in your mind but that the use of this hypersonic at the time it was used is not something that was planned, but rather was triggered in response to the use of British Storm Shadows and American ATACMS to reach inside of Russia? Stated differently, to wake up Sir Keir Starmer and President Joe Biden.
No question, but that is correct. Now, was it planned? Of course, they had it on a drawing board, and even Putin said this was a new missile. This was a test, okay? Oh, the test was successful, says Putin. And we have lots of other missiles just like this, and we're going into serial production. So, yeah, it was a reaction to this, giving the British and ourselves and the French now more latitude in striking targets deeper into Russia proper. But, those are pinpricks, Judge. Most of the Russian assets have been moved far farther away than 190 miles, which is the range of the ATACMS. They don't have so many ATACMS. There are limited numbers of Storm Shadows. I don't know what they're thinking. They're going to shoot them all off and then they'll have nothing? Bottom line, of course, is there's no defense against these things. So if the U.S. or Britain or France decide to play this game some more, and if they cause some real damage, let's say in Kursk, they can expect another one of these missiles to be fired, probably initially at strategic elements in Ukraine, but that does not rule out their use against this U.S. base in Poland or even Romania, or the airfields in Romania and Poland from which the F-16s would have to fly.
I don't know this fellow or even of him, whose clip we're going to run in just a minute. A retired colonel named Joseph Busino, but he is the former CENTCOM spokesman. Was on Fox News over the weekend and was critical of the use of the ATACMS and Storm Shadows. Watch this, Ray. Chris, cut number 7.
I think providing the ATACMS to Ukraine, allowing Ukraine to fire ATACMS into Russia was not necessary. They've got a few dozen ATACMs. It's really not enough to strengthen their foothold in Kursk. It's really not enough to change the momentum on the battlefield. And I think it's a little bit confusing what's happening here. And I think it makes all this a little bit less stable than it was.
Makes all this a little less stable than it was. Is the deep state trying to start World War III and dump it into the lap of Donald Trump?
The deep state doesn't think that there's going to be a World War III. They can bring us right up to the verge of World War III and scare the hell out of everyone, but they're confident the Russians are bluffing, okay? There's no nuclear policy. They're just bluffing. Well, thank God the Russians aren't going to use a nuclear weapon first because they're winning in Ukraine, because they don't have to, okay? My concern is that Blinken, they've done everything that they said they wouldn't do up till now. Biden has said we're not going to get involved in a nuclear war because that would be World War III. Is he going to change his mind on that one too? Is Blinken going to cause some kind of false flag attack with a mini nuke or something like that, so Russia would be provoked into reacting? Well, that's a possibility. That I wouldn't put anything past these guys, but for now, it looks like Russia has the upper hand because of this new technology. It is new. Everything that Putin said about it is confirmed by Ted Postal from what he's seen in the evidence, like real evidence, like not only photography, but electronic evidence. And Scott says the same thing. So there's a new reality here. It is a game changer. The question is whether the U.S., with a Blinken and Sullivan, will recognize it to be that and say, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let's tamp this thing down.
One of our viewers writes in, Colonel Busino. No wonder he didn't retire as a general. He's speaking the truth. He's being critical of the government, which, of course, as you know, from having been in the intelligence community, does not get you promoted. Who's in charge of American foreign policy and military policy right now? Is it Joseph R. Biden Jr.?
I don't think so. I think Blinken is running things. We have pretty good evidence that even Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, was cut out of this decision to authorize longer strikes into Russia. When his spokeswoman got up in the Pentagon and was asked precisely this question, she says, I can't answer that. I refer you to the press reports over the weekend. That's all I have to say about that. That happened twice. So did they cut the Defense Department out of this? Could the White House have ordered the U.S. general in what used to be USAREUR, the general in charge of U.S. troops and rocket forces in Europe, to do this, to allow this? Yeah, you could. And that's probably what happened. Now, the saving grace here is that there is a communication line. Austin has that with Belousov, whom you saw in that video, the white hair. He's a serious guy. They've used that communication
I think
channel.
he spoke at the very end of the clip after President Putin finished.
Well, he's a serious guy, and he's right close to Putin. So I imagine, and I think this more than just a hope, it's been used in the past. This channel, this back channel, if you will, is in play. And so Austin can talk to Belousov, and Belousov can warn Austin, look, if you don't rein in those neophytes, Blinken and Nod and Sullivan and the rest of them, this could be really trouble. And I'm sure he's doing that. Whether Austin will be able to come to the fore as he did 2 months ago when he prevented, that is, the Defense Department prevented Biden from doing precisely the same thing, that is, authorizing longer range strikes into Russia. That happened on it was Friday the 13th. Bad luck for the neocons. Like Friday the 13th of September, 2 months ago, that's what Biden decided to do. Now, what kind of shape is Biden in? Is he compos mentis? I don't know. What worries me is that Putin doesn't know either, nor do his generals, and his admirals are looking over his shoulder. This is a very, very delicate situation, worse than any I've seen, and I've been around for a long time.
Well, if your sources and your conclusions from your sources, and some of them are public, are correct. This is really malfeasance in office not to have consulted the Defense Department before unleashing something like this and failing to take into account the natural and probable consequences of it, which turns out to be a hypersonic missile that nobody can shoot down.
Well, they knew about the hypersonic missiles of that kind. They didn't know about this particular one. But Blinken is totally reckless. He doesn't realize how close we are to oblivion. And I think that he is just speaking for the president. So here he is down in South America, for God's sake. And he wires or he gets in touch with Jacob Sullivan. He says, look, Jake, we got the go ahead. You tell the commander of USAR, it's okay. We're authorizing the use of long range missiles, ATACMS and Storm Shadows and Scalps. And just tell him, okay? Now, that's probably the way it went down. Once the generals in Europe get word from the White House, Jake Sullivan, they do what they're told. The White House is the commander-in-chief. They realize that it might not be Biden, but they follow orders, right? So that's the way this thing went down. I truly believe that Austin was cut out because he came to the wrong conclusion last time in September, and he prevailed on Biden. So the Russians are looking on all this, Judge. That's what worries me. You put yourself in Putin's shoes. He's got to be on tenterhooks now. And there is reliable evidence that Russian nuclear forces have been put onto a high alert. I don't know about our forces, but probably they also are on higher alert.
Is there egg on the face, so to speak, of senior intel officials for failing to have warned Blinken, Sullivan, and nominally Biden of the existence and probable use of this weapon?
Judge, the situation is such now that no, there's no such thing. These people tell Bill Burns, for example, head of the CIA, or Avril Haines, the National Director of Intelligence, they tell them maybe what they want to hear, okay? If they tell them the real thing, it doesn't prevent Bill Burns from telling the president in July of last year, Russia had already lost in Ukraine. Their armed forces have been exposed as completely feckless for the whole world to see. That was July, first week of July last year. So I don't know what goes on here, but Bill Burns has turned out to be a cog in the wheel. He's been a propagandist rather than a director of intelligence. And Avril Haines, of course, is the one that said Russia is running out of ammunition almost 2 years ago. Running out of ammunition and having no indigenous capability to produce that ammunition that they're losing on the battlefield. That's what she said, okay? December of 2002. So there's the kind of clowns that are in charge there. And whether Blinken even thinks he has to listen to them is another question. He doesn't, okay? And he can do these things, and he's a very, very dangerous person to have in that place. And Lavrov knows that better than anybody else, his counterpart, the Russian foreign minister. And that's why there's some saving grace in this link between Austin, our Secretary of Defense, and the Defense Minister, Belousov, in Moscow.
Ray McGovern, thank you very much, my friend. I'll see you at the end of the week for our intelligence community roundtable with the young.
Financial asset.
We've got a real disconnect in the West. The media, the public reaction is just dismissing this as no big deal. What Putin unveiled the other day was this is a genuine game changer. This is a nuclear weapon that doesn't have radiation, that doesn't have a fireball, that doesn't create a dust cloud that will block out the sun. They can be precisely delivered that the West cannot stop.
Mm.
And when it hits, it destroys, literally pulverizes the target. There's a good recording out of an individual talking to his friend who worked at the plant, and she is just completely stunned by the devastation. That yeah, we didn't, because we're accustomed to seeing, shock and awe, like in Iraq, where the big boiling clouds of flame rolling and dust filling the air and smoke rising. Yeah, and then we find out, yeah, it destroys a particular area, but doesn't really, eliminate it. This eliminated that plant. This plant had significant portions of it were underground, and this is, we're into a new ball game now. This is Vladimir Putin he's in Babe Ruth territory. Okay, remember that famous game where Babe Ruth pointed to center field?
Yes.
Saying, hey, that's where I'm going, and he put it in center field. Putin has now said, going forward, if you continue with these attacks, we will respond immediately. We are going to hit military targets. We're going to give you advance warning, though. We're going to tell you to get your civilians and personnel out of there, because we're going to hit it, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And, he wasn't bragging. He wasn't, playing, bluffing as in poker. He was just being matter. He was like that, that scene from the movie Billy Jack, where Billy Jack says, I'm going to take my right foot here and put that on your right cheek, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. That's what Putin is doing right now to the West. And it is telling that the West has been very, very cautious since. They haven't been sending out the ATACMS and the scalps and the storm shadows since that happened, because they recognize Putin now has a weapon in his hands that can hit every single city or military base in Europe, and there's not a thing they can do to stop it.
What was the reaction of U.S. intel? I mean, did the CIA, the DIA, NSA, whatever three-letter agency you want to refer to, there's 16 or 17 or 18 of them, not know of the existence of this, Larry?
Apparently. I'm not privy to the intel these days, but I'm pretty sure there was, what the hell was that? What was that? Because they may have had some, understanding beliefs about what Russia was working on. But, even in the immediate aftermath, we kept hearing it was this kind of missile, and it was that kind of missile. And yet, I've watched Ted Postal on a couple of other channels, and even Ted is going, man, this is something new. I've never seen anything like this. So when you're as old as Ted is, and you've never seen anything like this, that's what they call an eye catcher. That should catch your eye and grab your attention. This has Russia has played a new kind of technology, and on top of it, insisted, hey, we got some other surprises up our sleeve that we haven't shown you yet either.
Is there any question in your mind but that this was fired in direct response to the U.S. authorization and participation in the use of ATACMS and the UK authorization and participation in the use of storm shadows, which reached inside of Russia?
None whatsoever. This is, Putin was coming under growing domestic pressure, particularly within the national security establishment, to say, okay, we got to take the gloves off now. We got to punch back. They were tired of being used as a punching bag. And, I think Putin, up to this point, was fearful that Russia didn't have a good intermediate response. Either we, you can send an Iskander, as they did apparently back in, March of 2022, when Russia hit the Yavoriv military base in Western Ukraine. That military base at Yavoriv was a de facto NATO base, and they hit it and destroyed a couple of buildings, but not with great devastation. Now Russia's got in hand a weapon that it can destroy that entire base and do so without creating a nuclear cloud, without creating radiation and fallout that would you could drift anywhere and potentially even contaminate Russian lands. So this is the Russians now have a trump card. They've got a card to play in this game that the other side doesn't. And that's why I say this is a game changer, because it's going to force NATO to reevaluate, because NATO's choice is either continue to allow these ATACMS and Storm Shadows and Scalps to go, and then face that their own military facilities are now going to be attacked and destroyed, not damaged, destroyed. And then what do? Launch nukes? And as you played it on your show last week, that Vice Admiral Buchanan from I guess the Strategic Forces Command claiming that, oh yeah, we're prepared and ready to fight a nuclear war. Yeah, you can say that. We are not. We're nowhere near ready and prepared. We don't have the civilian infrastructure. Russia is. Russia has been deploying mobile fallout shelters throughout Russia. And because of the recklessness on the part of these U.S. officials and U.S. military leaders, the Russians have now become convinced that the West is intent on attacking Russia with nuclear weapons, and they're not going to let that happen.
You referred to this weapon as Putin's trump card, so continuing the play on words, if President Trump in his first term had not pulled us out of the INF, and if the Russians had complied with the INF, would this thing have existed?
No. This is let's call this is the Trumpinator. This weapon is a direct consequence of Donald Trump's choices and his policy decision.
And probably advised by John Bolton and Mike Pompeo. They were his principal advisors in that portion of his tenure first time around.
Yeah, and what's unfortunate is Trump, unfortunately, he's named people to positions of leadership in the National Security Council that he's proposing, in addition to Mike Waltz, this character, Sebastian Gorka.
Right.
They're out talking trash and saying the stupidest things that could be said. I mean, just when I thought we had reached levels of imbecility with the Biden administration, the Trump folks are coming out of the gate strong, trying to outcompete them for saying just dumb things. Gorka is saying, we're gonna go tell Vladimir Putin what to do, and if he doesn't, the support Ukraine's received up to this point will look like peanuts. We're gonna pour it on. With what? I mean, just to say something like that to show he's so completely out of touch with reality. And this is where you need people that have got some calmness and some understanding about what the true state of the world is. And anybody that thinks they're going to bully Russia now, particularly since Russia has unveiled this new weapon, and we've heard people who call it the Kedr, they call it the RS something or other. I don't know what it is, and I'm not sure the intelligence community has yet come up with a name for it. But whatever it is, this is as important a change in military technology as happened on August 6th, 1945, with the bombing of Hiroshima.
Wow.
Prior to that, we had all these conventional bombs that were following. All of a sudden, boom, an atomic bomb goes off. Game changer. This was a game changer that the media is failing to fully acknowledge.
This will raise your blood pressure a little bit, but it's exactly what you were just describing. Here's Mike Waltz, Congressman Waltz, soon to be National Security Advisor Waltz, over the weekend saying, I met with Jake Sullivan. We see eye to eye. We're on the same team. Cut number 5.
President Trump has been very clear about the need to end this conflict. And so what we're need to be discussing is who's at that table, whether it's an agreement, an armistice, how to get both sides to the table, and then what's the framework of a deal. And that's what we'll be working with this administration till January and then beyond. And I also want to be clear on one thing, Jillian. Jake Sullivan and I have had discussions. We've met. For our adversaries out there that think this is a time of opportunity, that they can play one administration off the other, they're wrong. And we are hand in glove. We are one team with the United States in this transition.
Who would want to be hand in glove with the most abysmal foreign policy since the end of World War II?
Yeah. No, look, I said Trump. Trump's on the record that he's going to do certain things differently. And what Waltz is talking about is the same old game. And if Trump fails to follow through on his policies, his presidency's the dead. It'll be a dud. It'll prove that he didn't learn a damn thing from his first term. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But he's been given a historic opportunity to reposition the United States. The problem, Judge, is that the let's call it the zeitgeist in the United States is one that views Russia as an implacable foe, as a tyrant bent on conquering the world. We still hold these Cold War, Soviet era images of Russia without recognizing actually the changes that have taken place in Russia. So, it's unfortunate that he's not signaling a change. More of the same, and the United States is going to lose.
Here is a cut from a woman that I don't know or know of. However, her background maintains that she's a former intelligence official, CIA, NSA, DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, by the name of Rebecca Coffer. I think you'll probably agree with what she said. Surprise, surprise, it's on Fox News. Here she is, Chris, cut number 8.
So we war gamed this scenario, exactly this scenario back in the intelligence community. And we are right now on the escalation ladder, inching towards a nuclear war. The Russians and the United States are de facto right now in a war. Why is that? It is because those attackers don't fire by themselves, even though a Ukrainian soldier technically can push the button, but the targeting of the weapon systems, ensuring that there's a proper flight trajectory of the missile, that it destroys the right target, the actual battle damage achieved that we wanted to achieve, it all requires U.S. personnel and U.S. satellites. This is why the Russians have stated that the United States and European targets are now in crosshairs. And every war game that we conducted back in the intelligence community ended up in a nuclear war.
Makes sense to you?
Yeah. The ignorance and failure to understand Russia as it is, and to put ourselves in their shoes and understand it, how they view the world, because we've been so used to telling others what to do. I mean, you saw this over the weekend or last week with the reaction of people like Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton to the ICC warrants for Netanyahu, where Graham said, well, we're going to sanction Canada, and we're going to sanction the UK, and we're going to sanction France. And it's like, God, I knew you were not a bright fellow, but I didn't believe you were that stupid that, we sanction everybody who's our, quote, ally. That's all we've got. Or Cotton, we're going to invade the Netherlands. Oh, great. Yeah. So the United States has no other response than to threaten, to bully, to coerce. But you know what? If you're going to threaten and bully, you better make sure you can pull it off. And the problem is right now, we're finger poking Russia in the chest. And Russia's going to break our finger off one of these days. And there's not a thing we can do to stop it.
Let's extrapolate the existence of this weapon. Let's assume that there's more than one to Netanyahu and Iran. If Russia does not want Iran attacked, does Netanyahu stand still knowing that the last thing he would want is one of these babies coming at Tel Aviv?
Yeah, if Russia decided to share this with the technology with Iran, Iran would be able to take out immediately Russia's entire nuclear program.
You mean Israel's?
I mean Israel's, exactly. Sorry. Yeah, Iran would be able to take out Israel's entire nuclear program in a heartbeat. And you know, that's what's worrisome still. Let's compare and contrast. You've got Iran right now saying that it's going to retaliate. It's going to hit Israel hard. It's going to cause devastation. Okay, it's been saying that now for a month.
Right.
Nothing's happened. And my view is, if you're actually going to do something, don't sit there and talk about it. Do it. Putin's warning is quite different. He's not making a threat. Yeah, boy, we're going to hit you. He's saying, look, you keep doing this, we will retaliate, and we're going to retaliate specifically at military targets. We're going to tell you what we're going to hit so you can get your people out, because you cannot stop what we're going to fire at you. You can't. And
right.
We don't want to cause unnecessary civilian casualties. That's been the hallmark of Russian military operations throughout this special military operation. But now they actually have a technological solution, something where they can say, we are going to hit you. This is where we're going to hit you. This is when we're going to hit you. And you can't stop it. Get your people out. We're going to destroy that infrastructure. Because
wow.
I could see Russia very, very easily destroying that new base in Poland. There's a base both in Romania as well in Poland where they position.
Are these American bases, Larry, or bases
Yes.
that we have built and paid for?
Yeah, this is a new American base in Poland. It just opened 2 weeks ago. So I can see Russia taking that and destroying that base. You know, destroying the infrastructure so that no place to live, no place to eat, no place to train.
I saw the clip of Senator Graham saying we would impose the most severe economic sanctions on any country that attempted to arrest Netanyahu. Larry, the indictment of Netanyahu, which Netanyahu says was issued by a rogue prosecutor. I don't care about the prosecutor's personal sexual behavior. Those indictments are issued by a panel of 3 judges. The 3 judges wrote a publicly available and compelling opinion. My question to you is, couldn't Joe Biden, Tony Blinken, and Jake Sullivan similarly be indicted because war crimes are defined as pulling the trigger or providing the ammunition?
Yeah, no, they're facilitators. You know, go back to your days as a judge. If you had a guy that committed murder and then you also had the guy that sold him the gun and provided the ammunition that was used to commit the murder, knowing that that was the intent of what it was going to be used for, the other guy is an accessory to that murder. Not innocent. The problem, it'd be nice, or I guess entertaining is a more accurate word, to go back and pull Lindsey Graham's remarks about the ICC when they indicted Vladimir Putin for child trafficking.
Yes.
Man, he loved himself some ICC then. The ICC was the best. Now, this underscores sort of where I think the ICC has gotten out over its skis, because neither Russia nor Israel nor the United States are signatories to the Rome Treaty.
Right.
The Palestinians are. You can actually make a case from a jurisdictional standpoint that because the Palestinians are, you can charge the
Correct.
Russians with genocide.
You can
But-
charge the perpetrator if you have jurisdiction over the victim, and that's
Yes.
exactly what the court has here. That would allow the ICC to charge Biden, the perpetrator, the financer, the guy who provided the gun, the ammo, and the getaway car is Joe Biden. The guy who
Yes.
pulled the trigger and drove the car is Netanyahu, so to speak.
Yeah, no, and it is unquestionable that what the United States has enabled and facilitated on the part of the government of Israel is these attacks against the government of Lebanon, the people of Lebanon. There's no declaration of war, and yet Israel is bombing them. They're bombing Syria. Israel is this country that believes that it can go bomb any other country at once as long as it says it's trying to fight and prevent terrorism, which frankly is a precedent we, the United States, set, a very bad precedent, that instead of abiding by some sort of rule of law, it's the rule of the jungle, where we get to go rampage and kill and destroy whoever we want, and there's no accountability. That I think has been exposed now with this whole ICC situation, and here we have Graham and Cotton, both U.S. senators, calling for what would amount to acts of war against people that are supposedly our allies,
Right.
who are obligated under international law, which we claim to uphold, to abide by that arrest warrant. So, we've got a complete mess on our hands, where the United States has been used to driving the car, and now we're like that 84-year-old man that's his kids have had to take the car keys away from him. We're no longer safe to be driving that car.
Is the deep state trying to create problems for Trump that will be insoluble or unduly consuming of American blood and treasure?
Yes, and Trump, frankly, I think, is taking the bait. He met with Rutte the other day, the NATO Secretary General. Tell you what, as soon as Rutte walked through the door, Trump should have punched him in the face.
Why is he unleashing? Why is Trump unleashing Sebastian Gorka and Mike Waltz to sound like Lindsey Graham?
Yeah. Well, you can make the case that Trump's negotiating posture has always been he gets the most extreme position out in public, and then in private he walks it back and comes to a middle ground. And so maybe that's part of his negotiating strategy, to present this outward public hard line so that he can fall back. But I think what he fails to consider in that using that strategy is the Russians are taking what these people are saying at face value, and they're saying, okay, new administration, same old policy. We're not getting any change, so we're going to continue doing what we're doing. They're going to militarily defeat Ukraine, and the United States has no negotiating leverage with Russia.
Right.
Because the Russians know, what, you're going to give them more patriots that you don't have? You just had the commander of Indo-PACOM, the guy that's in charge of all U.S. forces in the Pacific theater, admit the other day the United States is tapped out, that if they keep sending stuff to Ukraine, they don't have anything to fight in the Pacific. So stop pretending that you got warehouses filled with inventory. You don't. The cupboards are empty.
So Chris, our producer, just texted me, while you and Larry have been talking, Biden issued a pardon. Thought, oh my God, Hunter, Trump, a turkey. So sometimes the presidency is reduced to the ridiculous. The president of the United States is killing people in Ukraine, issues a pardon to a turkey. Ray McGovern stated earlier today that his sources tell him that the American and British decisions to allow the use of ATACMS and storm chasers, forget if I have the right name, Storm Shadows,
yeah.
rate was made without Lloyd Austin, that the American DOD was kept out of the loop. Is that not malfeasance in office for them to make a decision of that magnitude without inquiring of defense professionals into the likely and probable consequences of the use of such equipment?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and they're probably now learning, much to their chagrin, that they should have brought Austin in on it, so at least they'd have some cover. Because if that is true, the military now is going to be in a position to say, "Man, you guys have set yourselves on fire. We got the fire extinguisher, but no, we're not going to use it." Because it sounds, people think, "Oh, Johnson, you're exaggerating. You've been drinking the Kool-Aid or something." But I can't emphasize strongly enough, and I think Alistair Crook made the same point with you earlier today. What we saw with this new technology that Russia unleashed is a game changer that gives Russia options that will close off options for the West, and it really puts Russia in a position it can precisely hit targets in the United Kingdom where they're not going to kill civilians, but they're going to kill infrastructure. Or if there are civilians killed, those civilians would have been stupid enough not to listen to the Russian warning that that place was going to be attacked and they needed to vacate. Because Putin is through playing. I would say his patience has been exhausted. They're no longer going to allow these missile attacks, rocket attacks that come via programming by Western intelligence military specialists. The drones is another thing. Yeah, the drones come in, but they can shoot the drones down, and they do shoot down the vast majority of them, and the drones don't cause that much damage. But this is different. And they've now, up to this point, the West has always pretended that the Russia was drawing red lines. Well, they haven't. They have now. This is a line. If you cross it, there will be consequences. And all we have to wait and see is if the West is foolish enough to test that limit.
Here's Donald Trump in March of 2023 on nuclear weapons and World War III.
We have never been closer to World War III than we are today under Joe Biden. A global conflict between nuclear-armed powers would mean death and destruction on a scale unmatched in human history. It would be nuclear Armageddon.
He's right, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, he was right for that time. What we are now is Russia's got non-nuclear options where it can have the destructive effects of a nuke without all of the other nasty consequences like fallout, radiation, clouds of dust that obscure the sun. So that's what I mean. It's a game changer. It's really, it's almost something like a Star Wars death ray. It can hit and obliterate that particular site, but it's not one that's going to necessarily cause a lot of unwarranted civilian casualties.
I wonder what Mike Pompeo and John Bolton thought about when they woke up on Saturday morning and read about this in the newspapers.
Well, they're going on what they read in the newspapers. They were probably misled. The newspapers have done a very poor job of really explaining the importance and significance of this technology. And frankly, I think a lot in the West don't understand it. Again, when you get Ted Postal, and he's looking at it and he's going, "Man, I've never seen anything like that. That's new." That should tell you. He didn't get those gray hairs on Amazon. He earned them the old-fashioned way.
Thank you, Larry. Always a pleasure, my dear man. We'll look forward to the intelligence community.
Reports reaching the open-minded thinker news team suggest that Israel has agreed to a ceasefire following what is being described as the most intense missile barrage since its operations in Lebanon began. Over 250 missiles overwhelmed the Iron Dome defense system, striking critical targets in Israel's northern and central regions. The attacks have left Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu scrambling to address the public and justify a truce amidst ongoing violence. According to Israeli media, the ceasefire proposal has yet to be finalized, with multiple issues requiring resolution. However, Tel Aviv has reportedly approved the core principles of the agreement, which have been communicated to Lebanon. Support the mission to tell the truth about Palestine and Lebanon against Israel's lies and censorship. By liking and sharing this video to reach others, subscribe to stay up to speed with the latest.
The people of Israel want this war to be the last war. We do not need another ceasefire or UN resolution. We need peace. Wars should end with peace. Lebanon should make peace with Israel. Hezbollah wants to fight another day. Hezbollah wants more wars. The Iranian regime wants to give Hezbollah more weapons and more money so that it can keep attacking the people of Israel. That's why Israel demands freedom of action in Lebanon, even if there is a ceasefire. Right now, one of the reported problems with the ceasefire agreement is that the French government wants to be on the oversight committee that will monitor the implementation of the agreement. The French government sides with Israel's enemies. France has consistently voted against Israel in the United Nations. After the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant, the French government indicated that Netanyahu and Gallant could be arrested if they enter France. US President Joe Biden reportedly told French President Emmanuel Macron that it's not possible for the French government to mediate a deal in Lebanon at the same time that the French government says it will arrest the prime minister of one of the parties of the conflict.
Hypocrites.
Is that fair? This is what Israel wants the whole world to know. Israel will never again allow a terrorist army to mobilize on its borders. Hezbollah cannot be allowed to regroup, rearm, and redeploy. Unfortunately, there is no Lebanese force or UN force that is willing to disarm Hezbollah. The Lebanese government failed, the UN failed, the French failed, diplomacy failed.
The terms of the proposed ceasefire include a three-stage plan. Initially, there would be a cessation of hostilities, followed by the Lebanese resistance forces withdrawing their fighters north of the Litani River. Israel, in turn, would withdraw its forces from southern Lebanon. The final stage would involve negotiations to resolve disputes over contested border areas. An international monitoring body led by the United States would oversee the ceasefire. Reports indicate that Israel is seeking assurances from Washington that it can take military action if the resistance violates the terms and if Lebanon's military and international forces fail to respond. Despite the discussions of a truce, hostilities have escalated. Lebanese resistance forces have launched a steady stream of missiles into central and northern Israel, causing widespread disruption. In response, the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, intensified their operations, targeting Beirut in what has been described as one of the deadliest strikes to date. The recent IDF operation in Beirut resulted in the deaths of at least 20 civilians, with the military claiming it targeted a high-ranking member of the resistance, allegedly using civilian buildings as cover. This operation has drawn significant criticism, with observers accusing Israel of deliberately attacking non-military targets to pressure civilians into withdrawing support for the resistance. The IDF, however, has defended its actions, asserting that its strikes were aimed at command centers in Beirut used to direct missile operations against Israel. Analysts argue that such operations, while claiming to target military infrastructure, often result in widespread civilian casualties and the destruction of essential infrastructure. Entire villages in southern Lebanon have been razed, with some areas rendered uninhabitable, evoking comparisons to the devastation in Gaza. The continuation of missile strikes has also raised questions about the efficacy of Israel's military strategy. Netanyahu's claims that the resistance's firepower has been significantly depleted appear increasingly dubious. Instead, the resistance has demonstrated its growing capabilities, launching advanced missile barrages and deploying swarms of drones. In one unprecedented attack, the resistance targeted the Ashdod naval base in southern Israel using a coordinated drone strike. In another operation, Tel Aviv came under fire from advanced missiles and strike drones, further highlighting the evolving nature of modern warfare in the region. The scale and precision of these attacks have shaken Israel, undermining its sense of security and raising concerns about the resilience of its air defense systems. The Iron Dome, long touted as a symbol of Israeli technological superiority, has shown vulnerabilities in the face of coordinated and high-volume attacks. This shift in the balance of power underscores the urgent need for a diplomatic resolution, as both sides grapple with the heavy toll of prolonged conflict. The humanitarian impact in Lebanon is staggering. Civilians have borne the brunt of the violence, with widespread destruction leaving thousands homeless. Access to basic necessities such as food, water, and medical supplies has been severely disrupted. Meanwhile, international calls for restraint have intensified, but the lack of concrete action by global powers has left many questioning the effectiveness of international diplomacy in preventing further escalation. The resistance, led by figures like Naim Qassem, has maintained a firm stance, signaling its readiness to negotiate, but refusing to compromise on its core demands. Qassem's recent statements suggest a calculated approach, using the truce proposal as leverage while continuing to assert military pressure. This dual strategy has placed Israel in a precarious position, forcing it to weigh the costs of continued military engagement against the potential political fallout of agreeing to terms that may be perceived as concessions. For Netanyahu, the stakes are particularly high. His leadership has been defined by a hardline approach to security, and any perceived weakness could undermine his political standing. Yet the unrelenting barrage of missiles and the resistance's ability to strike high-value targets have left his administration with limited options. The need to restore a semblance of normalcy for Israeli citizens, coupled with mounting international scrutiny, has made the ceasefire proposal an increasingly attractive prospect. The involvement of the United States as a mediator adds another angle of difficulty. While Washington's commitment to Israel's security is unwavering, its role in overseeing the ceasefire will be closely watched. Any perceived bias or failure to hold Israel accountable for potential violations could further erode trust in international mechanisms designed to maintain peace. Moreover, the recent escalation in hostilities between Israel and Lebanese resistance forces has intensified, with significant developments on both sides. Air raid sirens have been activated in multiple locations across central and northern Israel, including the greater Tel Aviv suburbs, as the Israeli military reported intercepting several of the approximately 55 projectiles launched toward northern Israel. In a concerning development, the Lebanese army reported that an Israeli strike on a post in Amriyeh resulted in the death of one soldier and injured 18 others, some critically. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, have acknowledged the challenges in their ground offensive in southern Lebanon, particularly in the town of Qiam. Despite 6 days of intense fighting, resistance forces have effectively thwarted Israeli attempts to capture Qiam, employing strategies aimed at inflicting maximum losses on the IDF's 210th Division. This marks the second Israeli offensive against the town, with no significant progress reported. On Saturday, intense confrontations erupted west of Qiam, characterized by explosions and heavy gunfire continuing into the morning. Resistance fighters launched coordinated drone and rocket attacks targeting Israeli troop concentrations in the area. These strikes reportedly disrupted Israeli command structures, resulting in multiple injuries and prompting a withdrawal of forces toward Al-Umra, south of Qiam. Israeli units were also observed retreating eastward with their vehicles toward Wadi al-Qiyam near the border. The strategic significance of Qiyam cannot be overstated. Its location offers a vantage point over large stretches of Israeli territory, making it a critical objective for Israeli forces. The town's resistance underscores the complexities of urban warfare and the challenges of engaging a well-entrenched adversary familiar with the terrain. The broader implications of this conflict are profound. The sustained missile barrages into Israel's heartland have exposed vulnerabilities in the nation's defense systems, challenging the perceived invulnerability of the Iron Dome. The psychological impact on the Israeli populace is significant, with air raid sirens becoming a frequent occurrence in major urban centers. Conversely, Lebanon faces a humanitarian crisis. The destruction of infrastructure, displacement of civilians, and loss of life have strained the nation's resources. International aid organizations are raising alarms about the deteriorating conditions, emphasizing the urgent need for a ceasefire and humanitarian assistance. Diplomatic efforts are ongoing, with international mediators striving to broker a ceasefire. However, the entrenched positions of both parties, coupled with the complex regional dynamics, make a swift resolution challenging. The involvement of external actors and the broader geopolitical implications add layers of complexity to the conflict. The situation remains volatile, with both sides suffering significant losses. The resilience of the resistance forces in Qiyam and the continued missile attacks into Israel highlight the protracted nature of this conflict. The international community's role in facilitating dialogue and providing humanitarian aid is more crucial than ever to prevent further escalation and alleviate the suffering of civilians caught in the crossfire.
The International Criminal Court at The Hague has officially applied for arrest warrants for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, charging them with war crimes and crimes against humanity. This is absolutely a historic decision that has caused a political explosion in the West. In fact, it has divided the Western alliance. The United States and a small handful of allies are attacking the International Criminal Court known as the ICC, and the US government is threatening sanctions on ICC officials. However, many Western governments are actually speaking out in support of the ICC, including the governments of the UK, Canada, Australia, and several European states. So the West is dividing over Israel. And meanwhile, some top US senators are threatening to invade The Hague in the Netherlands to attack the International Criminal Court. And other US senators are threatening sanctions not only on the ICC, but also on Western allies. They're threatening sanctions on the UK, on Canada, on European countries.
So to any ally, Canada, Britain, Germany, France, if you try to help the ICC, we're going to sanction you.
So this decision is having huge political repercussions, which I'll be discussing today. But first, I want to talk about what exactly Israel has been doing in Gaza. The United Nations created a special committee in order to investigate, and they concluded this November that Israel has been committing the G crime, the worst crime a state can commit. The UN Special Committee said, quote, Israel's warfare in Gaza is consistent with the characteristics of genocide, with mass civilian casualties and life-threatening conditions intentionally imposed on Palestinians there, end quote. They added, quote, Since the beginning of the war, Israeli officials have publicly supported policies that strip Palestinians of the very necessities required to sustain life: food, water, and fuel, end quote. They said that Israel has been carrying out systematic and unlawful interference with humanitarian aid, blocking aid from going in. And they added that, quote, through its siege over Gaza, obstruction of humanitarian aid, alongside targeted attacks and killings of civilians and aid workers, Israel is intentionally causing death, starvation, and serious injury, using starvation as a method of war and inflicting collective punishment on the Palestinian population, end quote. Those are the words of the United Nations published on the official website of the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And even the top human rights organization inside Israel itself, which is called B'Tselem, the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the occupied territories, they have said very clearly that the Israeli regime is trying to ethnically cleanse the northern part of Gaza, expelling the indigenous Palestinians and colonizing their land so they can never go back. This was also the conclusion of the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. He said that Israel is trying to ethnically cleanse Gaza, and he called for the world to act to stop it. And this is why the decision by the ICC to apply for an arrest warrant for top Israeli officials is so important and so historic, because the ICC has a long history of extreme bias. In fact, until 2016, as the Los Angeles Times newspaper noted, the ICC had basically only charged Africans, former African leaders, for the worst crimes at the court. So this is why many people in Africa and the Global South saw the ICC basically as a tool of the Western colonial powers and condemned it as the International Colonial Court. So this is why it was a matter of reputation. If the ICC didn't take action while Israel was carrying out blatant crimes against humanity and the crime of genocide, if they didn't do something to try to stop it, then the ICC would have been permanently discredited. By the way, I should point out another criticism of the ICC is that it waited 6 months to officially issue these arrest warrants. Back in May, the ICC prosecutor Karim Khan officially applied for the arrest warrants, accusing Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant of war crimes and crimes against humanity. And yet that process was delayed for half a year as Israel continued carrying out these crimes with billions of dollars of weapons from the United States and from some European countries. Throughout this time, the US government continued flooding Israel with military aid, including $18 billion of weapons and ammunition and other military support in just 1 year. Throughout that time, the US government was very heavily pressuring the ICC not to issue the arrest warrant. There were reports that the ICC prosecutor Karim Khan was being threatened and blackmailed. And it's very clear why, because US officials know that if Israeli officials are actually held to justice for their crimes, US officials could be next. In fact, back in May, when the ICC originally applied for these arrest warrants, numerous US government officials said exactly that. They said, if they prosecute Israel, we're next, because the US has carried out many war crimes and crimes against humanity in Iraq and Afghanistan, around the world, and the US is complicit in Israel's crimes because it has been funding Israel's crimes and giving it weapons and ammunition and support as it carried out these very well documented crimes.
So we, hopefully, together will find a way to restore our displeasure with the ICC, because if they'll do this to Israel, we're next. They tried to come after our soldiers in Afghanistan, but reason prevailed. So at the end of the day here, what I hope to happen is that we level sanctions against the ICC for this outrage to not only help our friends in Israel, but protect ourselves over time.
So what was the response of the US government that claims to defend the so-called rules-based international order? Well, US President Biden referred to the ICC decision as outrageous, and he attacked The Hague. Now, ironically, the ICC applied for arrest warrants not only against Netanyahu and Gallant, but also against Palestinians. So it did this kind of both sides narrative But the US was furious, and now Washington is preparing to impose sanctions on the ICC in alliance with Israel. And the US government said that it, quote, fundamentally rejects, end quote, the ICC arrest warrants. This is the reality of the so-called rules-based order that US officials constantly bloviate about. And they criticize adversaries like China and Russia, accusing them of violating the so-called rules-based order, in which the United States makes the rules and orders everyone else around. But when there are legal consequences for the US and its allies, suddenly they threaten the ICC. They threaten sanctions on the ICC. And some US officials want to use the military to attack the ICC, to invade The Hague, because they know that if there are consequences, if there is justice for Israeli officials over their crimes against humanity, there may be consequences and justice for US officials over their own crimes against humanity. The Republican Senator Tom Cotton threatened that the US would invade The Hague over this decision. Senator Tom Cotton was referencing a US law passed in 2002 known popularly as the Hague Invasion Act. The official name is the American Service Members Protection Act. And as Human Rights Watch noted back 2 decades ago, this law authorizes the use of military force to liberate any American or citizen of a U.S. allied country being held by the International Criminal Court, which is located in The Hague. So this is how the U.S. actually sees international law. It's willing to invade The Hague in the Netherlands, which is part of the European Union. This is a major U.S. ally, and yet the U.S. is threatening to invade them to prevent The Hague from prosecuting an Israeli official or a U.S. official. So there is no accountability for their crimes against humanity. These are the actions of a rogue state. The United States and Israel are rogue regimes. And of course, this is completely bipartisan in Washington. President Biden has been openly attacking the ICC, but also President-elect Donald Trump has been attacking the ICC as well. And Donald Trump's neoconservative national security advisor, Mike Waltz, who's a war hawk, Mike Waltz has been threatening to impose sanctions on the ICC and personally on the ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, who's a British attorney. And Donald Trump's neoconservative national security advisor, Mike Waltz, claimed that the ICC has so-called anti-Semitic bias, which is absurd. Now, these are not just empty threats. I think it's very likely that Trump will impose sanctions on the ICC when he returns to the White House, because in 2020, in his first term, the Trump administration did impose sanctions on the ICC. In that case, the Trump administration was furious because The Hague had opened an investigation into war crimes committed in Afghanistan by U.S. NATO forces. So they put sanctions not only on ICC officials, but also on their family members. U.S. officials were threatening the family members of ICC personnel. This is how criminal the U.S. government is. It's a rogue regime. And the irony is that when the Biden administration came to power in 2021, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken boasted that he lifted the sanctions and visa restrictions that were imposed on ICC personnel. And the Biden-Harris administration said, look, we are supporting international law and we are not attacking the ICC anymore. But here we are 3 years later, and the Biden-Harris administration is once again attacking the ICC, just like Trump did. This is completely bipartisan. But given that Donald Trump will officially be inaugurated president again in January, I think it's very likely that he will impose sanctions once again on the ICC, especially because back in June, the U.S. House of Representatives, the lower chamber of the Congress, passed legislation that called to sanction the ICC. This law was overwhelmingly supported by Donald Trump's party, the Republicans. Almost all Republicans in the House, except for 2, voted in support of this law. And also 42 Democrats joined the Republicans in supporting this law to impose sanctions on the ICC. So once again, this is bipartisan criminality in the U.S. government. Politicians in Washington attacking The Hague. That's how extreme these US politicians are. But what's interesting is that the US government is so extreme and so fanatical that it's actually alienating some of its own allies in the West. For instance, Australia's government has come out against the US and said that Australia will respect the decisions of the ICC. Even Canada, the northern neighbor of the US, which is so subservient to Washington, it's often jokingly referred to as the 51st US state. But even Canada's government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said that it will respect the decisions of the ICC. It will abide by the arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. The UK has said the same thing. The British government said it will comply with the arrest warrant for Netanyahu. So here you can see that the almighty Anglo-American alliance is breaking apart on this specific issue, on Israel. The US can no longer even pressure its closest allies, Canada, Australia, and the UK, to go along with it in attacking the International Criminal Court, because they can see how crazy and how extreme and fanatical that is, and how much damage it would do to them politically on the international stage. They can't talk about supporting democracy and human rights and the rules-based order when they're openly attacking the International Criminal Court. I mean, even these hypocritical governments, which are deeply hypocritical and imperialist in their own right, even they have a line that they can no longer cross. So what is the response of some US government officials? Well, the influential Republican Senator Lindsey Graham openly called for suffocating the economies of US allies like the UK and Canada and Australia and some European countries. He said the US should impose sanctions on their closest allies and suffocate their economies in order to attack the ICC and protect the Israeli colonial regime. Listen to this insane clip of the Republican senator and Donald Trump ally, Lindsey Graham.
So to any ally, Canada, Britain, Germany, France, if you try to help the ICC, we're going to sanction you.
Well, that means I want every ally. And you saw little Justin in Canada and his position. What should the penalty be?
We should crush your economy because we're next.
Think about how crazy that is. Top US officials are threatening to economically suffocate their closest allies. I mean, if this is how the US treats its allies, imagine how barbaric the US regime is with its adversaries. Of course, we don't really need to imagine that. We can see the invasions and coup attempts and sanctions and economic war and other, regime change operations and unconventional war that the US wages against countries all around the world. But this is how they treat their own allies. Well, what about the European Union, another major US ally? Well, top EU officials have also said that they will abide by the ICC arrest warrants. The EU's de facto foreign minister, Josep Borrell, has maintained that ICC warrants are legally binding and the EU cannot pick and choose. And by the way, the EU foreign policy chief, Borrell, also criticized this Israeli talking point, this propaganda, claiming that it's supposedly anti-Semitic to criticize Israel over the war crimes and crimes against humanity that it's been committing in Gaza. The EU foreign policy chief said, quote, "I have the right to criticize the decisions of the Israeli government, be it Mr. Netanyahu or someone else, without being accused of anti-Semitism. This is not acceptable. That's enough," end quote. So here, once again, we can see that the Western alliance on this issue has completely broken apart, and the US is more and more isolated, even from its own allies. Inside the European Union, the governments of Italy, Ireland, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France have said that they will abide by the arrest warrants. If Netanyahu enters Italy, Ireland, Belgium, the Netherlands, or France, they will arrest him. And by the way, I should point out that this is not the first time that we've seen this fragmentation going on in the Western Alliance. In fact, in September, there was an important vote in the UN General Assembly that demanded that Israel end its illegal occupation of Palestinian territory within 12 months. And the West was divided on this. In fact, several major European countries like France and Spain and Portugal and Ireland voted in support of this resolution. Most of the rest of Europe abstained, and just 2 countries in Europe joined the US in voting against the resolution, which was the Czech Republic and Hungary. But hey, Washington has one ally in the EU at least, which is the right-wing regime of Viktor Orban in Hungary. One of the only countries in Europe that has actually come out publicly and attacked the ICC and said that it will invite Netanyahu to visit is Hungary. And this shows that the US is the ally of the far right around the world. And this is not even with Donald Trump in power. I mean, when Trump comes in power, of course, he's going to continue supporting far right and extreme groups around the world. But Biden and Harris are in the White House, and the Democrats are in government right now, and they're in alliance with the far right, with people like Viktor Orban, saying that we hate the ICC, we support Israel, and we will attack the ICC. This is Washington's main ally right now in Europe. And if you look around the world, many countries in Latin America and Asia and Africa have said they will respect by this ICC ruling and they will arrest Netanyahu. But there is another exception, which is the far-right regime of Javier Milei in Argentina, who's a complete U.S. puppet. He wants to adopt the U.S. dollar. I mean, he just does everything that the U.S. wants. And Javier Milei has also attacked the ICC and expressed support for Netanyahu. Now, this is another very close ally of Donald Trump. He's part of the international far-right movement. And yet, once again, Biden and Harris and the Democrats are allied with the international far-right. They're allied with Orban in Hungary. They're allied with Milei in Argentina, the most extreme right-wing forces in Latin America. These are Washington's closest allies. Well, in Europe, the US and the international far right have one other ally, which is Germany, which is nearly always on the wrong side of history. And the German government has also come out publicly and said they will not respect the ICC arrest warrant because of their own history of the Third Reich and their own crimes against humanity that they carried out. So they learned nothing from the history of World War II and the Holocaust. They learned nothing, and today they're supporting those crimes again. So to me, that says everything about what's actually going on in the West. You have these governments that are willing to sponsor the worst possible crimes imaginable because it's politically convenient for them. But ironically, the situation has become so untenable, the crimes have become so egregious and overwhelming that the Western alliance, on this issue at least, is breaking apart. Now, of course, they still agree on many other things, like Russia and Ukraine and even on China, although on China they're increasingly divided. But on this issue of Israel's crimes against humanity, the Western alliance is fragmenting, and the United States is increasingly isolated. Its only allies are on the fringe far right around the world. And then the US talks about the rules-based international order while threatening to impose sanctions on The Hague, threatening to invade The Hague. To me, I think that's the perfect symbol to conclude with. That's the real face of the United States. But on this note, I'm going to
Well, tonight in the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, the brothers and sisters in Chicago has had enough, and they're continuing to put pressure on Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Now, the group is called Chicago Red. They all got together because they're sick and tired of the Democrats, and they are pushing the Republican Party. Now, we know Chicago has been a deep blue city for a very, very long time, but the migrant crisis has started to change that. So I want you to check out what the brothers and sisters said to Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, the one who's just basically turned his back on the black community.
Good afternoon. I want to know,
How does it feel that Trump is in office right now? You see the Mayor Brandon Johnson, you underestimate us. You underestimate the black people and you underestimate Chicago Red. We're the thorn in y'all side and we're going to be the thorn on everybody else in this council member side too. If you don't stop what you're doing, we're going to take matters in our own hand and we're going to stop it. You know that Trump had pulled 45% of the voter in the state of Illinois, 37 in the city of Chicago. That's the statistic. That means that Illinois is turning purple. We're going to turn red.
Y'all can bird dog me all y'all want, but if it's relationship over duty, then y'all don't serve the blue. And you can smirk all you want.
Mr. Sims, direct your attention towards me, please.
You're a criminal. Why do I got to address you? The feds need to address you. DOJ need to address you, and hopefully Donald Trump will address you because you're going to protect the undocumented. Why you going to allow for the citizens in Chicago to suffer under your, 3%? See, Joe Lopez cooked that 3% up a long time ago. Y'all called it a circuit breaker. Y'all been talked about it. Remember, before you came in here and gave that jovial speech, you need to be inspected. You and that creep over there.
Acting like, you just gonna bully everybody. You got people, officers whose families don't even want you to come to the funeral. You just like a schoolyard bully. That at some point, and you might not know nothing about it because you grew up in Elgin. But those of us who grew up on the south side and west side of Chicago, we all know at some point that bully gets cornered in the alley and everybody come at him and he ain't gonna have nobody to help him. That's you. That's you. Keep thinking you ain't gonna abide by what the president of the United States said. Everybody know better than that. I see you, Anna Valencia, in your red. You know what it is. This is the second time you showed up in city council in red. You know what it is? Yeah. Yeah. So you and the rest of them that know what time it is, y'all come on. You leave that loser where he is. He's a loser. He's a loser. No, me and Zoe, we ain't doing nothing for nobody except for ourselves. We got you, loser.
It's 14% rating is what you appear to have, Brandon Johnson, across the United States, or how they see you. But 14% rating. Now, I'm going to talk about all those known donations of $11.5 million that came from places like the CTU, the SEIU, the American Federation of Teachers, Illinois Federation of Teachers, and then someone got the nerve to get on there and talk about cutting their pensions. What about our real estate? Because see, we paid for these properties for a purpose and not for you to go touching it with $300 million that you want to siphon out of the citizens' pockets. Get rid of the illegals and that'll take your money right back. Start it off with that.
Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson recently submitted a budget, and this budget increased property taxes and other fees throughout the city. And the residents were very upset about that, because they're like, why in the world do we have to pay more money because of these migrants that y'all allowing to be here in this city? Y'all don't want to keep Chicago a sanctuary city. Why should we have to pay for it? It needs to come out of your back pocket, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, not the people that didn't ask for any of that. But the way it is, and this is what people need to understand. If you vote for the Democrat Party, that's what you're going to get, okay? You got J.B. Pritzker up there. He's up here saying that he's going to stand in the way of Trump getting the migrants out of the state of Illinois, right? Talking about, they got to come through him, like who he's supposed to be, right? And I hope they put criminal charges on these governors or mayors that try to stop ICE from doing their job, because these people don't belong here, right? We have enough issues and problems in America, but definitely issues and problems in Chicago. There are brothers and sisters homeless, brothers and sisters that need jobs, and they being here is taking up jobs, it's taking up resources, and they need to go back to their homeland and work on their own issues and problems over there. You can't just be no economic migrants. And that's who they are. They're economic migrants. They're not fleeing a war. There's no war in Venezuela, or that's where a lot of them are coming from. There's no war in Venezuela where they could, no, And if you seek asylum, you're supposed to seek asylum on the countries closest to you. Not pass up all those Latin American countries to say, I want to be up here in the United States of America. No, that's not the way it works. Because if it was up to me, I say deport them all, because they should be going to the first country that's by their country, not the United States of America. The only person that can claim asylum here, only countries, would be Canada and Mexico. But if it's not Canada and Mexico, then no, not whatsoever. These people have been gaming the system, and the Democrat Party has been helping them to game the system. And this is why a lot of Black Americans are saying, no, and hell no, you're not going to sit up here and make us pay for these migrants. That's not right. This is why Trump got elected, because of the immigration deal. And people are expecting Trump on day one to start mass deportations. And you think those brothers and sisters in Chicago not down mass deportations? That's why you even got brothers and sisters on X talking about, hey, man, it's the number of ICE. Look, let me tell you something. If ICE would start giving out rewards, say, hey, if you turn so many of them in, we'll give you a reward, man. Please, everybody be calling ICE and saying something nice. Say, hey, they over there. You know what I'm saying? And once again, I'm going to repeat this again. CNN and MSNBC and all those other ones, they're going to be trying to say, oh, look, this is horrible. He's breaking up families. But like Tom Homan said, when he was a police officer and he had to arrest somebody, arrest a father for doing wrong, that was separated him from his family. Everybody in jail right now is separated from their family. How many dudes in jail right now got kids, got girlfriend, well, had girlfriends, or wife or mama or somebody, right? And yet they're separated. Thanksgiving next week. There's a lot of brothers that's locked down right now that's going to be separated from their family on Thanksgiving. They're going to have to be having Thanksgiving, whatever kind of meal they're going to have in prison. So if we got people separated from their families right here in the United States that's in prison, then surely everybody else, but Tom Homan said he's not going to separate them. He said they can go together. And hey, I said, hey, I like that. They can go together. You can't come to another country, do whatever the hell you want to do. That's just not the way that works. You have to follow the laws of that particular country. And if you have to enter a certain way, like any country I've ever been to, I follow the laws of that country and get my visa or whatever else that I need. I can't break the laws. And you can't either. So yes, it's time for them to go. Trust me, all y'all in Chicago, y'all need to be registered to vote and vote out Brandon Johnson, which I believe he's going to be voted out. I don't see nobody voting him back in. But y'all, you can't be just get rid of Brandon Johnson and put in another Democrat, because that's going to be continue the problem. Y'all need to get not only Brandon Johnson out, but y'all need to get all the Democrats out of Chicago politics and try something different. And I really believe they will do that this time, but let's see what happens. Because I would hate for them to get rid of Brandon Johnson and put another Democrat in his place. No. God said, man, y'all about to have the same problem all over again. You could have just kept Brandon Johnson. That was the case. But Brandon Johnson is really messed up. He's really messed up. I would not want to be a mayor and everybody pissed off at me that much, because something that I can do to prevent these issues and problems. I'll let the voters sit up here and vote they want Sanctuary City or not. Get rid of Sanctuary City and say, hey, you ain't Sanctuary no more. Y'all got to go, because y'all draining our pockets. That's not going to work. How you going to come up here and live off of us? You don't even put into nothing in Chicago. But shout out to my brothers and sisters in Chicago. Like I said, I love Chicago. It's a great city. A lot of good Black people up there in Chicago. Y'all keep standing on business in Chicago. You got to.
With Tim Black.
Almost a majority of Americans have accepted Donald Trump and Trumpism. I think it's time to give this guy a month of peace. and let the process play out.
You're asking us to be
I don't know about giving him any peace, child. But what I will say, because you signed.
There are American citizens who work paycheck to paycheck, who gave money to Kamala Harris. They saw her as a black woman with an opportunity to become president, just for her to turn around and give their money to her friend Oprah, who's a billionaire. I told you I ain't gonna do the same thing again. And I see one coming across the horizon now. And her name is Jasmine Crockett, Representative Jasmine Crockett. And here she is proving all my points about how the Democrats are moving, man, and it is not for our benefit.
Is that you wouldn't rise to a rank of an 05 lieutenant colonel if our intelligence agencies thought that somehow she was some kind of Russian asset, which if people are going to level those charges, they better be darn sure that they're accurate. And it's a very
Nikki
dangerous
Haley
thing
didn't
to
say
do.
that. She said that it was sympathizing.
But it's all insinuated, okay? It's this cutesy, hyperbolic nonsense coming out of the media and the Democrats who refuse to accept the fact that almost a majority of Americans have accepted Donald Trump and Trumpism. I think it's time to give this guy a month of peace and let the process play out.
You're asking us to be
I don't know about giving him any peace, child. But what I will say, because you signed up to be the president of the United States, and we are definitely at a precipice in this country, and people were hurting, and they believe in him. So no, there should not be any peace over the next 4 years. He should be working every single day, not hanging out at Mar-a-Lago on, playing golf.
Okay, guys. Well, give it up for MRC Newsbusters for providing this clip. And there is my problem with the Democratic Party, with Donna Brazile and Representative Crockett specifically. But it applies to all of them, man. They do this. She just stated people were hurting, so they picked Donald Trump. Where were you the whole time that those people were hurting? As I recall, Jasmine Crockett, you were busy punching at Republicans. As I recall, you were busy grandstanding on Capitol Hill trying to make a name for yourself by being loud and sassy and sultry about all the things wrong with Trump. That's what you've been riding on. This was during the time when people were being hurt by what was going on under the administration of Biden. So now that you're all concerned, now you're ready to go to work. Your guy's still president, and you are suited and booted to kick ass and not give nobody no peace, child. Why would you give us so much peace when you were in power? And that's my main concern about Democrats. They want to come at us as if we failed them when they've been failing us all this damn time.
And let me tell you something, there is no better heart, there is no better man. And honestly, when it comes down to being an orator, that's never been who Joe Biden has been. I mean, I think that Obama kind of maybe hurt us in a little bit, and Lord knows I love him, but we got used to this amazing orator. And then you've got Trump. He's not an amazing orator whatsoever, but he knows how to just keep talking. And
just like you, Representative Crockett, all you do is keep on talking and talking and talking and talking. But what are you saying? Nothing. I'm speaking as a brother who supported Obama. And that's what woke my ass up. The Obama that went in 08 and the Obama that appeared in 2012. Totally different guy who've been living the last couple of years on some different stuff. And all you people that fell in line with him, all you that stayed the course with the nonsense. We didn't leave the Democrats left us, and we were just, some of us were smart enough to realize they not like us. They not for us. They are for themselves. But now you want to talk about what Trump's going to do, how bad he is, how horrible he is. We don't care about the gamesmanship. We don't care about the roast sessions. Fine, you want to go viral on Twitter? You want to be the next AOC? Great. But my only problem is I can't let you distract us. You understand what I'm saying, sister? I know they got everything is bigger in Texas, and I trust that you are. But at the end of the day, sis, I can't let you come out here and sheep herd a bunch of people into some bullshit just because you want to give a come up. You ain't Regina on 227? Who are you?
You're a grown-ass woman who's a lawyer, a highly educated sister up here cosplaying like you Jenny off the block. Jenny wasn't even Jenny off the block for real. But now you got all the smoke for Trump. Now you want to get into the fight to resistance. You know when the time was to be the resistance? If you wanted some respect, if you wanted some brag, some credential, some street cred, you could have been a part of the resistance when you were in party, when you were in power, when your party is in the White House. Oh my God, they still are. Why aren't you right now riding Joe Biden to get some things done right now for us? Why aren't you and Donna Bazile on that hill? Why aren't you fighting for that instead of talking about not helping Trump get something for us? You're already talking like you're going to oppose everything he does. Good thing he don't need you to get nothing done, because I don't think you would help him get a damn thing done, even if it benefits us, because you are really, truly in it for your team. Your team is not the people. Your team are the Democratic Party, because that's who's going to determine if you get elected or not. That's who put you on those chairs or those committees. Those are the ones that perform for you, and those are the ones that got your back come time for you to get reelected. So that's what time it is for you. Not only GOAT man, that some people will wake up and realize that you guys do not have our best interest. This is a perfect display, folks. It don't get much clearer than this. It really doesn't. Where was the determination? Where was the sense of urgency 6 months ago, a year ago? It's the same thing people were saying about Kamala. Jasmine Crockett was a surrogate of Kamala Harris. What was Kamala Harris doing on our benefit? What was her and Biden doing the last couple of years? What more could they have been doing? A lot. A lot. A lot. 21 Savage. Anyway, yeah. So as we continue the finger pointing, as y'all continue gaslighting, as y'all continue doing whatever this is, the shenanigans of the elites around the table talking about your little sports league going against Republicans, and it's got nothing to do with Reince Priebus. He was a White House former press secretary for Trump for about 2 seconds. I don't know this guy. I'm not supporting him. I'm not backing him, but he's right. Not only should you get Trump peace, you should give us peace. Some peace and quiet, and get down to doing your piece, which is your damn job. Stop grandstanding, going on the news every other day in a rant that means nothing. Think of the rants they could go on if they were actually ethical, had some integrity and some heart. I mean, I'm not saying that the rants that they go on aren't meaningful sometimes. It's meaningful to let Reince Priebus have it. It's good to, chin check Glitch McConnell. It's good to give him a piece of your business. But what about all the Democrats who need that work? How does it feel? Being someone who won't call out real shit. Think about it, folks.
Out of the media and the Democrats who refuse to accept the fact that almost a majority of Americans have accepted Donald Trump and Trumpism. I think it's time to give this guy a month of peace and let the process play out.
You're asking us to be normal.
I don't know about giving him any peace, child. But what I will say, because you signed.
There are American citizens who work paycheck to paycheck, who gave money to Kamala Harris. They saw her as a black woman with an opportunity to become president, just for her to turn around and give their money to her friend Oprah, who's a billionaire. And Crockett won't say shit, and D.L. Hughley won't say shit, and Donna Bazile won't comment, and I can't get none of these black folks to stand up for all the black women that gave money to Kamala Harris, just for her to give it to stars to show up at her damn rallies. Now, Trump would have did that shit. You had something to say. But since it's Kamala, I gotta say it. And then when I say it, some of you lames are gonna be like, he didn't have to go so hard. Then the other ones will be like, he is a sellout. Fighting for your dumb ass. Meanwhile, you let your boy Biden, who you said you respect more than your own father, which was disrespectful as hell.
Additionally, and that is the only evidence that they have brought forward. And honestly, I hope and pray that my parents love me half as much as he loves his child.
That was disrespectful as hell. As a dad, that was some cold-blooded shit. Folks, we gotta stop being misled by these people.
Join the Tim Black Show live.
They say you hear what people say, but you watch what they do. We've been hearing what the Democrats say for so long, and it sound good and it feel good. But we watching what they do, and they ain't doing shit. We hear what Trump say. It sound crazy. But when I watch what Trump do, and I go back and I look at real facts about how this man went to court every single day with Michael Jackson, how him and Don King was super, super cool, how this man was on the Wu-Tang Clan album, how when Jennifer Hudson's family was murdered, he put them up in Trump Tower for 6 months, protected them, didn't charge them a dime. How he sent his private jet to go get Nelson Mandela out of prison. How he gave Rainbow Push and Jesse Jackson $1 million to get started, to get activated in the Black community. How he gave me and Kwame Kilpatrick pardons to restart. I hear what people say and I watch what they do. I hear people saying they mad about Trump about the Central Park 5, and I get that. But then I know Trump passed the First Step Act, which done freed close to 20,000 people to this day, including Big Meech getting out on some of that sentencing reduction. That ain't got nothing to do with Kamala though. That's Trump in the First Step Act. But then I hear what Biden saying, but I know Biden responsible for the 94 crime bill and the crack cocaine disparity, the thing that took all the real niggas off the streets. This is what Trump's First Step Act was in retrospect to that. Trump's First Step Act overturned that 94 crime bill. That's why we see all the real ones come home. That's why we stuck with a generation of Lil Nas X.
Chills on my back right now.
All of this was strategic. Wipe all the real men off the street, push this agenda. Because if the real men were in the home, we wouldn't see this like this. So you watched your mama be this pillar of strength. You modeling behavior, go back to psychology. And then we watching agendas on TV. Unfortunately, the Democrat Party of the day ain't the same Democrat Party that Grandma done raised us on. A lot of us is Democrat because that's what Grandma done was on. We're gonna be honest. We don't even know why we Democrat. That's just what we on, because we Black. Grandma done said it. The policies have changed. Times have changed. We cannot be educated on abortion and Margaret Sanger and the racism in abortion and vote for it. You can't say Black Lives Matter and vote to kill the Black life that you create and then be mad at white people. Black women, we so stuck up in this feminism with having a choice that we got to feel liberated that we don't even realize the consequences of our actions. Like, we want to run around here and call a man a deadbeat if he don't want the baby, but bitch, you can go kill the baby and get a pat on the back when you don't want it. And at the same time, they screaming equal rights. They don't really want equal rights. They want control. And I don't want that much control. I don't want the right to kill my children. And if people gonna hate me for that, oh well. But you know, people waking up now, but I think what the issue is, again, we so stuck on racism. Like, they use this whole racism thing to try to control us when, you know, if I'm gonna be 100% honest, everybody that I know that was murdered, that I love, that was taken away from me, was taken away from me by somebody Black. Like, I don't even know nobody that was killed by a white police officer. I'm not taking away from that. I'm not saying that it don't deserve justice, but I'm saying on one hand, we get totally upset and blame it at the hands of racism. Then on the other hand, it's the same act. It's just by one person with light colored skin and the other person with dark colored.
Ooh, Angie did not come to play. Where did she lie? Bueller, go ahead and cover off on the Central Park 5, which we did read, which I did do a video on, which is still up. And no, it did not do numbers, but that's okay, because that's not what it was about. And he did not say that those particular boys needed to get the death penalty. I'm a believer in the DP. Y'all can be a believer in the AB, and I'm a believer in the DP. But as soon as someone comes up for the DP that happens to be colored, here come all the people saying it's racism, it's not right, he innocent, he innocent, he innocent. And I only say he because it's usually a man. Interesting how that worked, but y'all don't have all that fight and fervor for the ABs, the Roe v. Wades in the beginning. And the best thing that she just said, all of it was good. All of it was good. But the best thing that she said was, how is it that if a man don't want to take care of a kid, or you don't allow him to take care of a kid, because let's not act like that's not a thing, that he this, he that, he this, he that. But when you want to go do an AB, you get patted on the head for that. How does that work? Where they do that at? Oh yeah, in the community. And then you wonder why the community is in disarray, because nothing makes sense in it. Nothing has any type of consistency. Nothing makes any sense whatsoever. All you focused on is racism, and all you do is allow people to lead you down that racism path. And one of the things that she just said that I know you colors don't like is the fact that she said that the people that have been deleted in her orbit were deleted by other people that look just like her. I don't understand why y'all don't want to see that there's a problem in these communities, the same communities that have the same people of color that are running them for years, decades at this point. Let me rephrase, decades at this point, and y'all continue to bring the same people back. Y'all doing the same thing down there in Washington, D.C. I ain't even gonna name no names no more. You do the same thing in California. Keep bringing the same people back in here. You get nothing new. You get no new results. You get the same crime. You don't want to change. You're doing name recognition. Ain't no way that you're doing any type of investing or research into what that person has or has not done for you. There ain't no way that y'all are doing research. Sometimes I feel as though y'all don't even know where the heck it is that you live when you sit up there and you allow these people to continue to give you nothing but their ass to kiss while they are making hand over MF and fist, and they old as dirt. Old as dirt. Y'all don't want to get involved. All you want to do is blame. You don't want to parent your damn kids. You don't want the police to come in. You want the police to come in when you want them to come in, and then you want them to do what you want them to do. And when they go ahead and do whatever is needed that needs to be done, then you're mad at that. It's like no win for lose. There's no winning for losing. And that's why people is tired. And that's why all this pushback has come. And that's why Trump is one of the reasons why Trump was re-elected. You got the Cam, like I said, running on Roe v. Wade, trying to say that, oh, she's the first vice president to ever go to a clinic and then do a speech from there. Like, that's something to be proud of. Like, what are y'all on? Like, that is something to be proud of. How is it that women can be rewarded and looked up to because they have ABs? Like, what is wrong with you? Y'all don't even talk about all this alleged raping going on. Y'all don't never talk about that. It's just biatches who are hoes and they just want to use it as a birth control method. Y'all don't ever discuss it in those type of terms. You don't ever talk about all these people that are allegedly getting raped because it doesn't exist. Because the number is so damn small, and y'all just want to take something that's small and make a mountain out of it to try to use that to get your agenda done. Why is it? We need to look into the mental brains of people to understand why is it that you want to delete your children so badly? Why is it that y'all refuse to discuss birth control? Why is it that you can't get on the birth control? Why is it that you can't use a condom? Why is it that you can't use the birth control pill? Oh, I know, it disproportionately affects Black people. Well, why is it that you can't get on a good diet? Why is it that you can't get some daggone exercise in? Why is it that you can't reduce your BMI? Why is it that anything that's healthy and good for you, you can't do? Why is it that all you want to do is take shortcuts with things? Shout out to Ozempic. Shout out to Ozempic and all the big-headed, small-bodied people looking like they used to be on CRACK. Why is it that it's okay for you coloreds to talk negatively and nastily to other coloreds and then turn around and try to say that you want something from them? This is exactly what all these crash outs are doing right damn now. And others might forget. I will not forget. I will never forget any of this. Out of so many people in the community with regard to this daggone election, and y'all still refuse to see it. Y'all got the people that have been talking the same crap since the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, 2010s, still talking the same crap. You still want to vote for them. You still want to give them no doubt, give them no pushback. Go behind them as they continue to grow and get more and more rich, and you stay in the same damn place. People down here can't get a daggone job. You know, there was 12,000 jobs created last month. Yay! Oh, is that a good thing? Is that a good thing? While all these people are laying people off and y'all want to continue to go with the same thing all over racism? Y'all want to continue with Cam and daggone Biden because allegedly of racism of Donald Trump after everything that you just heard. Now, y'all done already told me about Jennifer Hudson. We already read about Central Park 5. I didn't know about Nelson Mandela. I knew that he did let out Kwame and Angela and the rapper dude, I can't think of his name, and probably some other people that I don't even know. I didn't know about this daggone Step Act. That's the reason why Big Meech is out now. Child, I know people who are doing things for money when I see them. I know that there are people that are getting benefits out of the stuff that they're saying. They don't give a damn. When I say that the government don't give a damn about you, I mean that crap too. But it's your responsibility to figure out what there is for you as a U.S. citizen, not as a Black person, as a U.S. citizen, and go take advantage of whatever the hell it is that is. If y'all thought times was tough with the daggone food stamps and the Section 8 beforehand, it's only going to get worse. And I'm here for it because there's a lot of wasted money going on. And I think that is what Donald Trump and his team is trying to do, is to cut the effing fat. I'm not saying that those people aren't interested in continuing to be rich. I know they don't want to be poor. And people who are poor know damn well that you would rather be rich. Say I'm lying. Say I'm lying. What are you doing differently in order to improve your circumstance? Nothing. When I tell you again to go ahead and listen to someone with financial sense, go ahead and talk to listen to Dave Ramsey, do what he says. He racist. You fight against your own damn interests. She's right about that as well. Black people fight against their own daggone interests because they ain't interested in looking into anything, ain't interested in reading. It's just easier to listen to blogs that are manipulating what it is that they putting out in front of y'all, and you fall for it hook, line, and sinker. Comments for the next 4 years is going to be, this is what you voted for. This is what you voted for. I'm telling you, that's all that they're going to say. They're going to act like they don't see all these layoffs. They don't act like they don't see all these people who getting kicked out, or the people who sitting around with all of the daggone crime that they're going to tell you crime is down, and y'all going to believe that, while they over there right now. Just saw a story over there in Baltimore. They over here still talking about somebody got to do something about this crime after you reelected Doogie. After you reelected Doogie, and they still over here talking about somebody got to do something about this crime. Who? It behooves him in order to have the crime continue to remain. And that is the same in any of these other cities. I don't understand why y'all don't see that. I don't understand why it is that you're not getting no new blood up into these places. These people have been running scam on y'all, and you have allowed it for decades, and you're still willing to do it. You still willing to do it, and you're going to sit up here talking about white supremacy, discrimination, and racism being your problem. No, it's these colors that y'all be listening to instead of doing your own research is the reason that you have the problems that you do. And until y'all decide that you're going to do your own research and make a life for yourself and stop following dumb shit and stop thinking you can do whatever you want and that somebody going to come save you, that's the only time that mess is going to change. And until then, you will continue to suffer, reap the suffering rewards, because that's what you chose to do. What's going on right damn now is because of the president that's in office right damn now. Now, I know they're going to sit up here and try to attribute every single racist thing that happens to Donald Trump, but I beg everyone to remember racism and racist acts have been going on well before daggone Donald Trump, before Biden, before Obama, before Clinton, and been happening during those people as well. But I know y'all will conveniently forget all that and just blame Trump for everything, and that's fine. And when you still where you are a year from now to the day, and you still complaining, and you still whining about what we talking about over here, remember what I'm saying today. Your circumstance is yours, your problems are yours, and where you end up is all your fault. That's it. That's all.
Go figure. Follow me.